Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. The old wizard marched straight up to the two witches in charge with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, Order of Merlin First Class, Transfiguration Professor and Deputy Headmaster of Durmstrang Institute of Magic. At your service, ladies. Our headmaster, Professor Karkaroff, sends his apologies. Personal reasons prevented him being here, so that duty then fell to me. Minerva couldn't hold back any longer. You have some nerve, Dumbledore, waltzing back in here as if you own the place. The great Albus Dumbledore ran away and left us in our hour of need. A 60-foot basilisk had to be dealt with by 4 second years. I think you'll find I was suspended, Minerva. Don't you Minerva me, you lost that right a long time ago. You scurried away from Scotland with your tail between your legs right before you could be sacked. I'll tell you this to your face, Dumbledore, you're not welcome in Hogwarts. Start messing with my students, and I'll smack you one. Well, it's nice to see the spirit of international cooperation being so warmly embraced. If this is your version of a Highland welcome, then it's not very hospitable. Come, students. I know the way, follow me. The Durmstrang students fell in behind Dumbledore with military precision. They marched in a column of twos and followed their deputy headmaster. Ron Weasley could clearly be heard in the silence that Dumbledore's arrival had caused. That's Victor Krum, that is. I didn't know he was still at school. Harry felt his friends gather around him, but it was left to Hermione to ask the question. How are you feeling, love? Stupid. We took this competition at face value. It's pretty obvious that others have different plans. Dumbledore has caught us on the hop this time. We're the ones now playing catch-up. The old man will try to use that to his advantage. We'll need to be careful until we can discover just what he's up to. Does anyone believe the old man being here is a coincidence? This was met with some derisive chuckles before Padma just had to comment. Roger will play for the Harpies before I believe that. Hey, Patil. No need to be nasty. Now if you'd said play with the Harpies, in your dreams, Davies. Frequently, Patil, though not as often as I'd like. This saw the group of friends chuckling as they made their way to dinner. It wasn't often someone verbally got the better of Padma, but Roger had even managed to make her blush. They arrived in the Great Hall to find the Beauxbaton students gathered around one of the fireplaces for warmth. The Durmstrang students, though, were already seated and making themselves at home. At the Ravenclaw table, they overheard one of the boys talking to Cho, telling her they had been told this was where the prettiest witches were to be found. Cho may have been eating that up with a spoon, but Hermione wasn't about to swallow cheesy lines like that. She didn't even sit down, turning to Harry. I think I've lost my appetite. Don't leave, pretty witch, sit with us. The Durmstrang student, though, had made the potentially fatal mistake of, in his attempt to convince this witch, grabbing Hermione by the arm and pulling her toward him. He soon had that error pointed out to him by the point of Harry's knife at his throat. You must have a death wish. Lay hands on my mate again and I'll cut you to pieces. Harry had been on edge since the second they had spotted Dumbledore. This incident on top was simply too much. His entire "we need to be careful" sentiment was now clearly forgotten. Hermione's reasoned voice, however, soon had him back in control. Harry, they've been set up. Who do you think told them to sit at Ravenclaw? Dumbledore must have been hoping for a confrontation. We all know he doesn't give a shit for the students under his care. They're just pawns to be used by him to get whatever that twisted mind of his wants. Although back in control, Harry did not move his blade. The other Durmstrang students also found themselves facing a plethora of wands, ensuring they would take no part in this confrontation. You will apologize to Hermione at once, and let this be a warning to all of you. I don't know how things are in Durmstrang, but I'll tell you how they work inside Hogwarts. You grab a witch like that, you're going to find me coming looking for you. The incident had kicked off so quickly that only now were the staff arriving at the scene. Centurion Crow, please put your knife away. As soon as this person apologizes, Madam Longbottom, if he doesn't do so soon, I intend to push my blade home. Hermione instantly received her apology, and Harry's knife disappeared into its holster. This was also the cue for all the wands covering the other Durmstrang students to be lowered too. While delighted his little opening ploy had worked, Albus was left cursing the Granger girl for seeing through it so quickly. This was the second time she had done so with his plans. But he'd work with what he had. "Madam Longbottom, one of my students has been attacked. I would like to know what you intend to do about that." "Since your student laid hands on Miss Granger, Centurion Crow's mate, who has a ring on her finger that you can see in the dark, I would say the Centurion's reaction was measured and appropriate. He would have been perfectly within his rights to challenge your student to a duel. Remember, Dumbledore, goblins fight duels to the death. Losing a student to a duel on the first night of your visit would be poor management, even by your low standards." Watching as the student in question paled considerably, Augusta then turned her ire onto Albus himself. "I don't know what you've been telling your students, or what your real agenda is here. Know this, Dumbledore, I wholeheartedly agree with Professor McGonagall on this. You start messing with my students and the both of us will smack you," repeatedly. "I can hardly remember the last time we issued a detention in Hogwarts, far less had an incident in the Great Hall." Albus couldn't help but notice the students dressed in the black dragon hide, or that Harry was clearly their leader. "I suppose it helps when you have Potter's private army imposing themselves on the school." Harry wasn't about to let Dumbledore set his obviously prepared agenda. He decided to see just how much the old man knew of what had been happening inside Britain since his absence. If nothing else, this tactic might just throw the old wizard out of his rehearsed stride. "Did you know we caught Peter Pettigrew alive? He was questioned under truth serum. Peter told us everything. You cast the Fidelius charm on my home, and knew all along that Sirius wasn't the secret keeper." It was plain from the shock on Dumbledore's face that he didn't know that information. It would have been hard to get hold of, however, since Harry just made it up. The Ministry had pushed for swift justice with the Death Eaters caught attacking the Bones residence. It was only later everyone realized that questions should have been asked. With 2 pregnant women in the family, and every single member involved in at least one of the battles, the deed was done before that question occurred to Barchoke, or anyone else. The extended family were all too busy thanking their lucky stars they all survived unscathed. Harry, however, now pushed home his clear advantage, not having to fake his anger in the slightest. "I told you what would happen if I discovered you were behind my parents' murders." All his bravado had disappeared, and Albus knew he was arguing for his life here. He wouldn't survive being implicated in the murder of the Potters, politically and probably physically too. Harry was now too close, and those blades of his were deadly. The old wizard was practically pleading with Harry now, begging to be believed. "No, Harry, I didn't know Pettigrew was a Death Eater. I also thought Sirius had killed him, along with all those muggles. We didn't know who to trust after that, which is why I left you with your muggle relatives." A fist to his jaw sent Dumbledore crashing to the floor, the sword of Gryffindor swiftly pinned to his chest, making sure he stayed down there. Sirius had silently exploded with rage, and at a speed that meant he'd been on Dumbledore before anyone could prevent it. At the moment, Moony's strength was the only thing stopping Sirius killing the old man, with his bare hands too. "Let me go, Moony, this bastard cost me 10 years in Azkaban." And Harry's just made sure that's where Dumbledore's heading. "We all heard him admit his guilt, and Astrid needs her father. I may have let my nephew down, but I'm determined to do better with my niece." That one of his darkest secrets was now publicly known really through Albus. At least the bloody press weren't here this time to capture it for their front page. How could this have happened? Again, Harry pressed home their advantage, using it to try and stop his godfather committing murder. "Moony's right, Sirius. We've got him this time. Madam Longbottom, could you please flow Amelia Bones?" Hem. "Actually, that won't do you any good." Augusta was getting closer and closer to strangling this bitch every time she made that infuriating noise. "Madam Umbridge, what business is this of yours?" "You forget, Madam Longbottom, I am now the Ministry's lead advisor to the tournament. As such, I know what arrangements have been made for the visiting schools. In his youth, Headmaster Karkaroff made a mistake and joined the Death Eater movement. He paid for that mistake and then moved abroad. It was actually Draco who interrupted Dolores with the truth behind that last remark. Karkaroff informed on every Death Eater he knew about to get as light a sentence as possible. The bold Igor then fled the country in genuine fear of his life. Only knowing she was winning this argument allowed Dolores to keep her temper. Nevertheless, Headmaster Karkaroff insisted some safeguards be put in place. The staff representatives of the visiting schools were granted diplomatic immunity for the duration of the tournament to any past indiscretions. Since this immunity didn't cover any indiscretions committed after they arrived in Hogwarts, the Ministry agreed to the condition. The only crimes I've seen committed tonight have been by Black and Crow, so please by all means call the auras. Oh, I certainly intend to contact the Ministry over this. I can also promise that if you played any part in Dumbledore returning to Hogwarts, you will be out this castle moments later. I can assure you the only people I dealt with were the heads of each establishment. There was real fear in Dolores' eyes now. Getting chucked out of the castle tonight would end her usefulness to the Dark Lord and allow Lestrange free rein with that knife of hers. Harry meanwhile had called for Helena to ask if they could bar Dumbledore from the castle. I'm sorry, Harry, but I have to say no. Durmstrang and Beauxbatons were both invited here by Hogwarts, thus we can't throw him out unless he gets caught doing something to warrant such actions. He was now looking to Augusta for help, part of him so wanting to push his blade home and end the manipulations once and for all. Dumbledore must have recognized his predicament because he never said a word. That Sirius had hit him hard enough to fracture his jaw might have played a part in that silence too. Madam Longbottom, at least tell me that invitation didn't cover the Merlin Ball. No, it didn't, Centurion. The original invitations had both the schools arriving just before Halloween. Dumbledore, you are not invited and certainly not welcome to our celebrations. For once in your life, do the decent thing and stay out of Hogwarts tomorrow. Harry then turned his attention to the Durmstrang students, his sword still resting on Dumbledore's chest. He noticed they were once more well covered by wands. Your headmaster is a marked Death Eater. Even trying to enter the Hogwarts wards would see him die. Your deputy is a manipulative old goat who, as you've just heard, seems to take great delight in interfering with people's lives. He doesn't care whose lives those are or what damage he causes. Only getting what he wants counts with Dumbledore. The reputation of the Durmstrang Institute of Magic is hanging by a thread. You are all invited to tomorrow evening's Merlin Ball. If you can't behave like gentlemen, I would strongly advise you not to attend. Padma was holding one of those wands covering the Durmstrang students. She just thought of something. Hey, that's Dirty Anne. You have to admit it was pretty dim to give Dumbledore a job, an even dimmer move though was to grab Hermione. One of the Durmstrang students then rose slowly, making sure his empty hands were clearly visible. Harry recognized leadership in this wizard, while whispers around the hall identified him as Victor Krum. That you say, we did not know, we can see the truth in your words, and in all your anger, all we ask is a chance to prove we are gentlemen. Please don't judge us on this. Victor indicated their fallen deputy headmaster, obviously desperate not to be classed the same. A slight bow from Harry was returned by Victor, and acted as the signal for every wand directed at the Bulgarians to be lowered. Harry's sword made it into his sheath, and his arm was offered to Hermione. They surprisingly headed for the French delegation as the staff now cleaned up behind them. Harry could see Henrika, Tonks and Remus all working on Sirius to calm him down a touch. They stayed well away from that task. Only Hermione on his arm was allowing Harry to keep his own temper in check. Now they had confirmation of just what that old man had done. He was staying clear of his godfather at the moment, just in case they set each other off and murdered a certain old wizard. They approached, noticing at once that all the French students had their hands near their wands. Harry bowed deeply before addressing them in perfect French. Madame Maxime, students of Beauxbatons, my apologies that you had to witness the last 10 minutes. My family, and Hogwarts herself, has some very serious issues with Albus Dumbledore. That incident should, however, not have happened like that. You are most assuredly welcome guests here. He switched to English, realizing he hadn't introduced himself properly to either camp. I am Centurion Crow, Baron of Kinksea, Order of Merlin, First Class, Award for Bravery, Goblin Nation, and Hogwarts Champion. This is my mate, Hermione Granger, Friend of the Nation, Order of Merlin, First Class, Award for Bravery, Goblin Nation, and the witch I will marry, as soon as our parents will let us. Our friends just call us Harry and Hermione. That saves a fair bit of time. Harry had tried to inject a bit of levity into what must have been quite a traumatic introduction to Hogwarts for the French and Bulgarians. Their headmistress picked up on something else, though. What? Hogwarts has already chosen a champion. How can this be? Oh no, madame. Hogwarts chose me as her champion 3 years ago. It has nothing to do with any tournament. I will not be competing in anything Dumbledore or Umbridge have a hand in. Like the students from Durmstrang, all I would ask is that you please not judge us on what you've witnessed here tonight. The ball tomorrow should give you all a chance to see the real Hogwarts, a school we're very proud of. Oh, and honor dictates we must wear our awards tomorrow. I wouldn't like to give the impression we wore them all the time. With another deep bow, the couple left the hall, Padma and Neville covering their friends' backs, without making it obvious they were doing so. The four would eat in the room of requirements tonight. Harry would speak to Helena about having Dumbledore monitored on every occasion he set foot in the castle. He suspected, however, that the Lady Ravenclaw would have already taken care of that. While Harry was talking with the delegation from Beauxbaton, a poleaxed Albus found himself looking at the last person he expected to see, kneeling beside him with a wand in his hand. Only after having some healing charms cast on his injured face was Albus able to speak. Severus, what are you doing here? Wondering the same thing about you? It was a mistake to come back to Hogwarts, Albus. You have no sway in Britain any longer and a host of very powerful enemies. A mere promise of immunity won't stop the powerful and resourceful figures lined up against you for long. Severus now had the old wizard on his feet and was shepherding him out the hall. Albus, though, wanted information. What happened to you? Where did you go? How are you able to be inside Hogwarts? I spent some very pleasant time in Gringotts, and I'm able to be here because I'm not a Death Eater. Not sure whether Black's blow had done more damage than he thought. Albus asked for confirmation. But Severus, you carry the dark mark. They were leaving Hogwarts now, but Albus still clearly saw the smile Severus wore as he answered. Do I? This hit like another blow. You've discovered a way to remove it. I thought that was impossible. Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean no one else does. You didn't know how to remove a Horcrux from a toddler or how to heal the Longbottoms. These things still happened. My time in Gringotts taught me a lot, and not just about potions. Severus, you must tell me everything. No, Albus, I don't. But you made oaths. I have made oaths, and I fully intend to see Riddle dead while Lily's boy lives a life that his mother would be proud of. Can you say whatever plans you'd hatched would have had the same outcome? Don't even bother with any half-truths or greater good shit. Neither of them will work on me. I got you out of there in one piece. Take my advice and stay out. Go back to Bulgaria, forget all your schemes and just teach. You might find you actually enjoy it. I know I have. Am I the only one who can see this? He's using Hogwarts to create his own army, and everyone keeps falling over themselves to help him. 2 Blacks and now Lupin on the staff, students wearing those dragonskin robes. All that's missing is the masks. It's Tom Riddle all over again, only with Gringotts backing and both the Ministry and Hogwarts supporting him to the hilt. Our way of life might not survive this. Severus, you need to help me stop this. We need to turn Harry around. Your eyes tell you only what you want them to, completely missing the truth of the situation. Lily's boy has already made his choices for life. Ruling Britain isn't one of them. He wants nothing more than to marry Miss Granger, raise a family and one day take over from his father as ambassador for the nation. Severus was trying not to get angry, but Albus was still peddling the same shit from a couple of years ago, only his methods seemed to have changed. Not that they appeared any more effective. If you had taken time to look at those black dragonskin robes, you might have noticed they contained a long bottom, Bones but Lovegood Diggory, 3 members of the Weasley family and 5 Slytherins. My godson is one of those Slytherins. It's certainly helping Draco become the outstanding wizard I always knew he could be. You are the only one that sees it different, Albus. What are the chances of the entire country being wrong? Because Albus Dumbledore sees things differently. Lily's boy treats everyone the same, a concept that's revolutionizing the country. Riddle tried a revolution too. The Dark Lord is finished, it's only a matter of when, and trying to limit the damage that he does before he's dealt with. The Ministry has cut his support so badly, he was forced to live in a Muggle tent at one point. Lily's boy will never be a Dark Lord. Do you think Alastor Moody would train him if there was any chance of that happening? I'm more worried about you turning. Don't be ridiculous. Am I, Albus? Who just admitted to placing an innocent man in Azkaban. I thought Black killed Pettigrew and a dozen Muggles. That's hardly innocent. And it just happened to remove a certain godfather from the picture. Now you're working in Durmstrang, a school well known for teaching the dark arts. Where's Fawkes? I haven't seen your Phoenix since just after the Quirrell fiasco. Did he leave? There was no answers forthcoming. Severus hadn't expected there to be. You see how much easier it is to turn your own arguments against you? The country you once lorded over no longer exists, and needs Albus Dumbledore about as much as it needs an outbreak of dragon pox. The Ministry is being efficiently and fairly run, and Hogwarts is now a far better school. There's nothing left but trouble for you in Britain, Albus. Leave, and enjoy the rest of your life. Riddle will be taken care of and Britain will flourish. Would you rather the name Dumbledore was forgotten, or remembered solely for your exile or imprisonment? Being totally honest with you, I can't see any other outcomes here. They were at the gangplank to the ship now, and Severus had some final words of advice for his former headmaster. My allegiance hasn't changed, Albus. I want Riddle dead, and Lily's boy enjoying a long and fruitful life. I am more confident that will happen now than at any time since that horrible Halloween all those years ago. Have a think about your own goals, Albus. I would advise you to take all day tomorrow to do it. Stay away from the castle, especially tomorrow. Only trouble awaits you there. Leaving a thoughtful Dumbledore behind, Severus headed back to the castle. Whatever plans the old wizard had would be sure to involve Harry in some form or another. His own oath to the nation prohibited him working against Harry. There was no way Severus Snape intended to find himself back under Dumbledore's thumb again. He'd warned his former headmaster, though Severus didn't expect that warning to be heeded. Albus Dumbledore always thought he knew better than everyone else. Albus was currently thinking his plans would need to be altered. Again, he was so sure the weak link was the girls, hence why he'd included a few good-looking boys who had a way with the witches. That damned Granger girl almost read his mind though, and Harry had certainly grown in the last few years. Only Victor could possibly match him in physique. Albus reckoned, however, that Crow's reactions were quicker than one of the world's best seekers. He hoped Dolores was having more luck than him. She was never going to admit they had been keeping in touch since Albus discovered the Triwizard Tournament would be held in Hogwarts. His promise that a proper pureblood would win the tournament was all Dolores needed to hear to see the witch pledge Albus her support. He only had until the summer to somehow worm his way into influencing Harry's life. That was looking more and more like an impossible task. He was Albus Dumbledore, though, a wizard who'd been doing the impossible for over a century. Dolores might not have taken a punch to the jaw, however her head was still reeling from the onslaught she was facing. Fudge, Bones, Diggory, Longbottom, and McGonagall all seemed to want a piece of her. I'll say it again. I dealt only with Karkaroff and Basim, and then only briefly. My main contacts were my opposite numbers in the French and Bulgarian ministries. The 3 of you spent a lot of time with the Bulgarian Minister of Magic last month. Did he mention it? Amelia was not amused at what she saw as evasion tactics from this witch. Why would we ask the minister that? And why would I ask my counterparts who their schools were sending? Albus Dumbledore is no friend of mine either. No one there could argue with that. Dolores didn't really have any friends. All 3 ministry officials accepted invitations to this weekend's events in Hogwarts. If nothing else, they wanted to witness the events for themselves, knowing the time for their morning runs around the Black Lake was soon coming to an end. made today's decision a little easier. From tomorrow they would run inside the room. The portals of the Durmstrang ship felt a little too much like eyes. Eyes that watched their every move. Eyes were watching their every move as the four friends entered the great hall. Those black dragonskin dueling robes, seeming to make the two impressive medals each wore jump right out their chests. The quartet strode toward the staff table where custom dictated they formally greeted Hogwarts' other pair of Orders of Merlin, first-class holders. The wizards from Durmstrang who were this morning sitting at the Slytherin table thought Crow then ruined a very impressive entrance by returning to the Ravenclaw table with a baby in his arms. The Beauxbatons contingent, primarily composed of witches, was sitting with the Puffs this morning. They thought the scene was adorable. Neither group was quite sure what to make of the female goblin who accompanied the red-headed wizard into the great hall. The fact that she ran to the Ravenclaw table and started throwing her arms around students was especially strange. No one from Durmstrang or Beauxbatons said anything, however. They were left thankful for their silence as people from the tables they were sitting at rose to affectionately greet this goblin apparently known as Sapphire. None of them missed that she seemed closest to Crow and his mate, another good reason to be glad they'd said nothing. Information on Crow wasn't exactly hard to come by, just ask any student and they could quote you chapter and verse. Yet the person who effectively ran the students of Hogwarts was sitting with a baby in his arms and a goblin at his side. This was going to take some getting used to. Sapphire sat beside Luna and holding Astrid as the four left with Bill for their scheduled training session. They noticed there were visitors at lunch but didn't pay them too much mind until Cornelius rose to speak. The draw to select the Tri-Wizard champions, who will each represent their school, will take place in this hall tomorrow after dinner. The draw will be made by an ancient and powerful magical artifact, the Goblet of Fire. At that, Mr. Filch wheeled in a trolley with a large gold and crystal cup on it, of a size that even Hagrid would struggle to empty it of butterbeer in one go. It doesn't look too impressive at the moment, but at 8 o'clock tonight, the goblet will ignite, burning for 24 hours. I know we will all be otherwise engaged tonight, but the goblet will sit in the entrance hall all day tomorrow. An age line will be drawn around the cup by Professor Flitwick, bringing unwelcome consequences to those underage who try to cross it. Be warned too, those of age. Once you place your name in the cup, it cannot be withdrawn. If chosen by the goblet, you must compete or face paying a most severe penalty. Excitement over, the four friends headed off for their lesson with the Blacks. Luna and Sapphire accompanied them today, the lessons being a mixture of politics, history, and preparing them to take up their positions in the world. It was a far more relaxed environment, almost like a discussion amongst friends than lessons. There was always a point to these discussions, though. All four always left feeling they'd learned something useful. There would be no prizes won for guessing the topic of today's discussion. Dumbledore and what to do about him. Earjet had left last night with an urgent message to Gringotts, Bill confirming this morning that the nation's reaction was just as angry as theirs. While they were holding their discussion, it was comforting to know the Ministry and the nation were both doing the same. At least the old goat seemed to be heeding their warning and staying away from the castle today. None of them believed he would actually return to Bulgaria. Cornelius was struggling to believe the room he and his wife had just entered. It was nothing short of magnificent. He noticed the older Hogwarts students appeared to be expecting nothing less. Their French and Bulgarian visitors, however, were an entirely different matter. Even Madame Maxime couldn't hide her surprise. That might have been the sight of Hagrid in some sort of hairy suit, though. Amelia was beside him, providing more information. Since the ball's inception, Harry has provided the clothing for the new first years. He also had dresses and suits made for all his friends. Notice how no one even mentions the fact that his friend Sapphire is on Harry's other arm. Amos too was most impressed with the setting. This makes the Ministry Ball look like a tea party. We're going to have to rethink that event before these students start attending. If I was used to this, I would be expecting something spectacular for the Ministry's premier event. At the moment, we can't compete. After a really lovely meal, custom now dictated that the dancing was started by those Orders of Merlin holders. The four couples took to the floor as the second part of the evening got underway. As he did last year, Harry then danced with Sapphire next. Hermione was smiling as she watched them having fun. That was until her view was blocked by a rather large Bulgarian. "Miss Granger, may I have the pleasure of this dance?" Deciding this might be a good move, she agreed and took to the dance floor. "Your name is Hermione? Actually, it's pronounced Hermione. And your name?" This almost drew a smile from the Bulgarian. "I am Victor Krum. It is unusual for me to meet people not knowing my name. I like it." Hermione's laughter was cause for quite a few people to relax. They might all know she could handle herself, just as they all knew she wouldn't have to. There was bound to be public and political fallout, though, from a Harry-Victor Krum confrontation. "I know exactly what you mean, Harry, and I get that a lot. In Gringotts now, everyone bows to us. It can get rather embarrassing. It's nice to go on holiday in the Muggle world and just be two unknown teenagers for a change." "Harry, he is your mate?" "Yes, we blood bonded over 2 years ago now. We've already picked the date and location for our wedding. He is a very lucky wizard. He considers himself a goblin, but would probably agree with the rest of your sentiment. I wouldn't, though. We hadn't known each other a week when Harry raced through the castle and took down a mountain troll that was trying to kill me. We were 11. A mountain troll in the castle. How did that happen?" "Oh, Voldemort let it in. He was teaching here. Dumbledore hid the Philosopher's Stone in the castle and then employed a Voldemort-possessed professor to teach us defense. That all happened in our first week here, and then things just kept getting worse and worse." "How can they get worse than that?" "Oh, easy. Dumbledore has a real knack for it. Did you know he and Gellert Grindelwald were lovers when they had just left school?" The fact that the sure-footed Bulgarian stumbled at that was enough of a clue. Victor didn't know. "Like your Dark Lord, we tend not to say that name. You say both." "I'm not frightened by a name. I've actually seen Voldemort, fought against him too." "That's not strictly true, though. Harry put him out of the fight right at the start. Tonks and I only had to charge his Death Eaters." This brought another stumble from Victor. Those medals this beautiful witch wore told him she was indeed telling the truth. "We were told the brave went to Gryffindor, the smart would be in Ravenclaw, and the beautiful." This drew another laugh from Hermione. "Why, thank you, sir. I shall take that as a compliment." The dance finished, and Victor became the second person to kiss her hand. It was meant as one. "At least we know which house has all the pretty witches." "Oh, I can't let that stand. Come with me a minute." Victor followed on behind until they came to stop beside a stunning blonde. "Daphne, this is Victor. Could you please dance with him? He's under the impression that all the beautiful witches are in Ravenclaw. I'm sure you'll change his mind. After your dance, perhaps you could introduce him to Hannah and Susan, maybe Katie Bell too." Daphne took a stunned Victor by the arm and headed on to the dance floor. She looked over her shoulder to have a quick word with Hermione. "What if I want to keep him all to myself?" This drew some laughs before Hermione answered her back. "That will be up to Victor." Daphne almost laughed herself at Victor's worried face. "It's all right, Victor, you'll be safe with us. We're all friends, out to have a good time at the ball. Our definition of a good time is lots of dancing and having some laughs, just so there are no misunderstandings between us." "Thank you for that. This is unusual for me, being treated as normal wizard." This set Daphne giggling, a sound Victor thought he could easily get to like. "We have 4 of our friends who are Orders of Merlin, first-class holders. 3 of them are also friends to the Goblin Nation, and Harry is both a Centurion and a Baron. They don't like to be treated any differently. We'll simply pass that on to you too." As the dance ended, Daphne thanked him, and suddenly he was dancing with someone called Susan. It was many dances later that Victor realized 2 things. He was actually having fun, and there were many beautiful witches at Hogwarts. Not all of them Ravenclaws. Harry was back dancing with Hermione, asking her when she started playing matchmaker. She thought for a minute before replying. "Victor actually reminds me a bit of you. People he meets don't see Victor, they see Krum, the Quidditch star. I thought introducing him to some of our friends might just open his eyes and lower that wall you strong, silent types seem to have. This drew a chuckle from Harry. Lower my wall? You can practically read my mind, just as I can yours. Now tell me what you're really up to. Victor seems like a nice guy, and obviously someone the other Durmstrang students look up to. It certainly wouldn't hurt to have him as a friend, if he wants to. I got the distinct impression he was looking for a lot more than that from you. This saw Hermione smile at him. Then he's going to be disappointed. You, Centurion, are all I'll ever need. You are mine. And I am yours. Harry ended his declaration with a loving kiss. Marco wasn't feeling the love. He could still feel the shame of having Crow's blade at his throat. He wasn't stupid, though. Far from it. And only someone stupid would tackle Crow head-on. No, his revenge was going to take an entirely different form. Crow claimed he was the school champion, here to protect the students. Marco's revenge would be to ruin a few of those female students. He'd already spotted a couple of the witches eyeing up the Durmstrang visitors. One in particular was making eyes at him. He was a handsome wizard. More than one girl had said so, and he knew just how to sweet-talk girls into doing what he wanted. Marco would be sparing with his dancers and attention tonight. This would let him see just who was willing to chase him. Once he focused on the one he chose, they would soon be putty in his hands. Then it would be time to move on to his next conquest. That would not start tonight, however. This was purely reconnaissance. He would let the heat die down, and then, when all the attention was on the tournament and Professor Dumbledore, Marco would start his campaign. His ultimate goal would be to get with one of the witches wearing a dragon-skin cloak. He would save that, though, for nearer the end of their time in Hogwarts. He might have to make a hasty retreat if he was successful. Sapphire didn't think it was deliberate on Harry's part. She also had no knowledge of how things worked for teenagers, other than goblins. But the group with Harry and Hermione at its center was about as goblin as you could get. A large group of friends and family, all coming together to have a good time and looking out for one another while doing so. She had felt very comfortable at the ball last night, between the fair, staying at King Ossie and the island. Sapphire now knew, and was friends with, a large number of the people at the ball. Even staying in Hogwarts last night hadn't troubled her. Hermione, Padma and Luna were like sisters to her now. Staying in Ravenclaw with a room the castle had provided had been great. She and Luna had sat chatting well into the night. Certain others had to be up for their training in the morning. Luna, being such a good friend, was why Sapphire was now uncomfortable. She would be returning to Gringotts with Assistant Ambassador Weasley after he had finished training the 8th that attended his Sunday lesson. Sitting having an early lunch, they saw the Durmstrang students arrive and head for the Slytherin table. Mentioning to Luna that she wished she'd asked Victor for an autograph, saw the blonde dragging Sapphire over. "Hi, Victor. My name is Luna, and this is my friend Sapphire. She has only recently discovered Quidditch and was wondering if you could sign an autograph for her." This wasn't what was making Sapphire uncomfortable, though. Her blonde friend was growing, and her physical beauty would soon match the wonderful person that Luna Lovegood was. Others were recognizing this too, and Luna had been on the dance floor for most of the ball. The looks a couple of the Durmstrang students were giving Luna was the reason for Sapphire's discomfort. They were staring at Luna as if she was some kind of tasty morsel, something no goblin would ever stand for. Victor was a gentleman and wrote an autograph out for Sapphire. He then spoke, though she just wanted to get Luna away before Harry came in and started a riot. Hermione had said there wasn't a word in the goblin language for protective, because they didn't need one. Harry was certainly very protective of Luna. "We'll see you back at Hogwarts for any of the tasks, or the Quidditch matches." "Oh, Harry and Hermione don't watch the Quidditch. They won't miss their training for tasks or matches. I suppose that's why they are so good at what they do." During the Baron's Fair at the summer, Harry fought the greatest blade in the nation to a draw, twice. This drew the eyes off Luna, as she'd intended. They said their goodbyes before heading back to Ravenclaw, Sapphire switching to her native tongue so as not to be understood if overheard. "Luna, there's a couple of them sitting there that make my skin crawl. You might want to put the word around the girls. You think I should say something to Harry? He could certainly have them closely watched. It might be better to speak to Hermione, though. No goblin male would stand by while a female family member was being gawked at like that. They were undressing you with their eyes, and not caring who saw them doing so. They were very lucky Harry was still at training. This resulted in a shiver from Luna, and a determination to speak with Hermione. The four then entered, and it was time for Sapphire to say goodbye to them too. She'd had a lovely time, but now it was back to Gringotts. The minister was right about one thing. The Goblet of Fire was far more impressive when it lived up to its name. There still wasn't the enthusiasm for the tournament in Hogwarts that the organizers might have hoped for, the vast majority being far more interested in the Quidditch matches, especially since the Puffs and Lions would now get a chance to play against Victor Crumb. There were probably more names in the cup from Durmstrang and Beauxbaton than there were from Hogwarts. With Dumbledore now back in the castle, it was an uneasy dinner that most would have happily skipped. As there was now a ministerial delegation sitting at the top table, Harry felt duty-bound to at least sit through the ceremony. When the goblet started spluttering, it was the minister who stood. As the cup nears making its decision, all that is left to say is good luck to those of you who have entered your names. With a flurry of flames, the first piece of singed parchment was spat out the cup, before gently floating toward the Minister of Magic. All eyes were now on Cornelius as he read the name. The champion for Beauxbaton is Fleur Delacour. The beautiful blonde witch stood and walked regally toward her headmistress, the polite applause drowning out the fact that another Beauxbaton witch was crying her eyes out because she didn't get chosen. As the flames spat out a second piece of parchment, again they waited on the minister reading the name. The champion for Durmstrang is Victor Crumb. The Durmstrang students made a lot of noise as Victor stepped forward, though he didn't seem too happy to be standing beside Dumbledore. With the final flurry of flames, all knew this piece of parchment contained the name of the Hogwarts champion. The minister didn't keep them waiting. The champion for Hogwarts is Cedric Diggory. As the only member of their group old enough to compete, they were all delighted Cedric had been chosen to represent Hogwarts. Not half as delighted as his father, however. A beaming Amos was clapping away like a man possessed. As the noise died down, they began to notice that the minister was still staring at the goblet. Knowing the goblet should have extinguished after it threw out the last name, Cornelius had a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach that things were about to go horribly wrong. Sure enough, the goblet spat out a fourth piece of parchment before the flames died. With a shaking hand, Cornelius grabbed the piece of parchment out of the air and read aloud the two words written there. Harry Crow. Harry Crow. The minister's words hung provocatively in the air, no one quite knowing what to make of them. It was perhaps predictable. It would be Padma's voice that broke this expectant silence. Her anger, though, was not something people were used to experiencing from the normally pleasant witch. What is going on here? We all know Harry would never put his name in that stupid cup. Could somebody simply walk up and stick his name in there, and then suddenly he's the chosen one? The minister was actually the first to react. I don't know, Miss Patil. You can rest assured, though, it is something that will be getting thoroughly investigated. Centurion Crow, could you come forward, please? As Harry kissed a nervous Hermione and stepped forward, Albus made his first suggestion of the night. Perhaps we should take this discussion somewhere a little more private. His suggestion was jumped all over by Augusta. That's not the way we do things in Hogwarts anymore. This affects everyone in this hall. Let them hear what happens. Harry, I already know the answer, but I must ask the question. Did you put your name in the cup or get someone else to do it for you? Understanding the position she was in, Harry gave Augusta a warm smile as he answered. No, Madam Longbottom. My feelings on this tournament are well known. I want nothing to do with it. Of course he would say that. Harry was on umbrage before she could say any more. I would be careful there. You are getting awfully close to calling me a liar. You couldn't handle me on my 12th birthday, and still carry the scar to prove it. What makes you think you can take me now? Call me a liar and that's your only option. Dolores slid her scarred hand into her pocket, and also found herself on the receiving end of a glare from the minister. No one in this castle doubts your word, Centurion. I asked you out here to determine what happens next. As the ministerial lead organizer for the tournament, it fell to Dolores to pass on the news. A person's name coming out of the goblet constitutes a magically binding contract. They must compete in the tournament or lose their magic. This resulted in gasps of horror from around the hall. Madame Maxime appeared particularly upset. Why were we not told this before? Would I known, I would never have let my students near something as dangerous as that. Cornelius and Amos appeared to be vying for the right to throttle Dolores for dropping them in this mess. But Harry cut them all off by getting in first. A magically binding contract. Are you being serious or just incredibly stupid? That is the rules. Again, Harry verbally slashed and aggravated Dolores to shreds. You want to argue contracts with a goblin? You really must be stupid, then. The way I see it, I have two options. Dumbledore's eyes were back to twinkling full force. Here was the opening he'd been longing for. Harry, perhaps I can offer you a third option. One you might not have thought about. This drew some very skeptical looks. Harry appeared ready to gut the old man for even using his name, but Albus pressed on regardless. That piece of parchment places Harry Crow in this tournament. If Harry Crow no longer existed, the contract would be void. Declaring yourself as Harry Potter would instantly end your participation in this tournament. Albus was stopped by Harry's reaction to his suggestion. Being heartily laughed at was not something he'd expected. It took a moment to regain his control before Harry could speak. Oh, sorry everyone, but that was just too funny. Did you come all the way from Bulgaria to engineer that, old man? Albus appeared affronted. I had nothing to do with your name being placed in that cup. Harry, though, was ignoring him. Instead, his concentration was focused on Hermione. I think it's time. Love, you okay with this? Her smile answered his question, as did those of his friends and family who knew. Turning back to the minister, Harry actually appeared a bit sheepish. Minister, I have a bit of a confession to make. I am currently the head of the Potter family and have been since I was 11. My father and godfather have been helping me keep the secret. The time just seemed right to let it out. All could now see the Potter family ring on Harry's finger. The look of shock on Dumbledore's face was almost worth having him in the castle for. Cornelius, though, had a far more important concern than some ancient wizard suffering an aneurysm. Does this mean you've made your decision, Harry? We think so, Minister. Both Hermione and I are happiest in King Usse. Being made a baron was also something I earned. Our children might one day want to take up the mantle of Lord Potter. That will be their decision. Until then, I will be the Baron of King Usse and head the Potter family. I hope this is a decision people can accept. Harry found his hand being grasped by the minister and shaken in congratulations. Cornelius was now thinking awarding that barony might be one of the smartest decisions he ever made, and was sure the wizarding public would think so too. I can certainly accept that, Harry, and on behalf of the Ministry of Magic, hope you and your mate spend many happy years living in King Usse. Now, you mentioned a solution to this problem. A relieved Harry got back down to business. I see two options, Minister. First, other than having a magical guardian do so, only I can enter myself into a magically binding contract. Since I'm considered an adult, I'm head of the Potter family and certainly didn't put my name in that cup. No contract can possibly exist between it and me. The contract will be formed with whoever placed that piece of parchment in the goblet, not me. We could simply sit back and wait until the first task was over, and then discover the culprit by seeing who lost their magic. This drew some relieved sighs around the hall. It seemed so simple now. Harry had explained it. The trouble with that solution is, if someone was put under a spell to place my name in that cup, the contract would still be bound to them. There are people currently in this castle who I certainly believe would stoop to something like that. Harry staring at Dumbledore as he said this was not lost on anyone. My second option is foolproof, and therefore the one I choose. In a flash, Harry's sword was drawn and embedded deep in the goblet of fire. The goblet might have been impressive when lit earlier. The resulting light show as the goblin blade overpowered the magic of the cup was spectacular, if somewhat short-lived. The now ruined ancient magical artifact spewed out all the parchment that had been placed in it before they, and the 4 pieces that had been chosen burst into flames. The 4 champions' parchment and any resulting contracts were now nothing but ash. There, all the contracts have been broken? You just ruined the tournament and destroyed a priceless magical object. Harry again rounded on Dolores, now thoroughly sick of that voice. You say it was priceless. I say it was bloody useless. Someone can stroll up, pop my name in with no school written on it, and suddenly I'm a 4th champion, with a magical binding contract to boot. You are about as useful and smart as your ridiculous goblet. We goblins would never let something that can so easily be fooled decide our fates, especially when it involves binding contracts. Switching his attention to Madame Maxime, Harry turned on the charm. Mesdames, you will clearly know your students far better than any stupid magical cup. Who would you have chosen to represent Badbaton in this tournament, without that horrible magically binding contract coming into play? Olympe glanced toward where the rest of her students were sitting, noticing the witch who'd been sobbing was now staring straight back at her. It would have been a choice between 2 for me. I am happy for our champion to be Miss Delacour. Harry just glanced at Dumbledore and received Victor Krum as a curt answer. There are your 3 champions, and now your competition can begin. Excuse me, Centurion, why was my opinion not asked? My apologies, Madame Longbottom, I just assumed you would choose Cedric. Shaking her head at Harry's genuine modesty, Augusta proved him wrong. Using your own logic, Centurion, there really is only one name I can choose. Harry felt a hand rest on his shoulder as Cedric couldn't contain his chuckles. She's got you there, Harry. But Cedric, you entered this tournament, I didn't. And you kick my ass in training every week. With Victor here, it's more than likely Hogwarts won't be winning the Quidditch competition. You can give us something to cheer about at the tournament. Chanting of Harry, Harry began coming from the Great Hall as the Hogwarts students agreed with Cedric and their High Inquisitor. They knew who they wanted to represent them. Hogwarts herself had chosen Harry as their champion when he first set foot in the castle. The Harry in question, though, was still to be swayed. But I'm a Centurion, Cedric. It wouldn't be fair to Miss Delacour or Mr. Krum. A still chuckling Cedric couldn't believe his friend. Do you think the fact that he's an international seeker, who just took his team to the World Cup final, is going to stop Victor catching the snitch against me? You're a goblin, Harry. You taught us to use whatever advantage we have. The constant chanting of Harry's name was getting louder and louder, practically taunting Dolores into saying something. Perhaps this goblin is just afraid of losing to a witch or wizard. Harry didn't even justify Umbridge's comment with an answer. Instead, he went right over her head and spoke directly to the minister. Is she really necessary for this tournament? After Harry's earlier revelation, having him as Hogwarts champion in this tournament would be a massive endorsement for the ministry and practically guarantee a Hogwarts victory. Compared to that, Cornelius was certainly prepared to make some much-needed compromises. After this fiasco tonight, I think it's fair to say Madame Umbridge will be changing departments, probably right after the first task. The chanting now was really loud, and the students were stamping their feet and banging their tables in time to their chant. Such was Harry's control that when he raised his hand for silence, he got it instantly. On those headings, and assuming I'm Madame Longbottom's choice, I will accept the nomination of being Hogwarts champion for this tournament, as a goblin. This resulted in much cheering around the hall. The Triwizard tournament just got interesting for the Hogwarts students. Dolores couldn't believe what just happened. She'd effectively just lost her job because of that goblin bastard. She'd be kicked out of Hogwarts too. This was just too much. Glad that she'd written the next part down. One item that she had still to announce gave Dolores hope for a glimmer of revenge. The first task is designed to test the champion's daring, so we are not going to be telling you what it is. Courage in the face of the unknown is an important quality in a wizard, very important. Dolores' gaze was focused on Harry now. The first task will take place on October the 31st, in front of the other students and a panel of judges. The champions will face the first challenge armed only with their wands. They will receive information about the second task when the first is over. Cornelius saw the problem at once, stepping in to solve it. Since the Centurion carries no wand, the rules will need to be changed to allow him his blades. Now Cornelius, rules are rules. Albus found himself faced with two formidable witches. Since when did you follow any rules? Don't you dare start quoting rules to me. Augusta wasn't pulling any punches, but Olympia went even further. You would force the youngest champion to face these tasks, unarmed. What kind of wizard are you, Dumbledore? The Durmstrang champion too was having trouble hiding his disgust. He had watched Harry carefully and saw how he acted with nothing but honor. Victor then thought it was time he did the same. I am happy for the Centurion to have his weapons, otherwise I will leave my Von behind too. That ended any discussion on the matter. The rules would be changed to reflect they now had a goblin as an entrant. Harry bowed to Victor in thanks before Henrika entered the proceedings. She was still sitting at the staff table, but there was something that needed to be said here. The family were well aware Harry would make his own decisions. He could certainly look after himself, so they weren't too worried about this development. What worried Henrika was the nature of the tasks themselves. Excuse me for interrupting, Minister, but there might be something you hadn't considered. Having studied the nation intensely while researching my book, there was one thing that stood out above all else. Never, ever mess with a goblin's family. I mention this because, when reading about this tournament, I noticed the repeated past instances of taking hostages for the champions to then rescue. I can't emphasize enough how much of a bad idea that would be in this case. It was now Centurion Crow who was standing there, tall, proud, and incredibly angry. The Lady Black is of course correct. A goblin would first rescue their hostage before hunting down whoever took them in the first place. That this was done for a tournament would not be considered a valid excuse. Retribution would be sought. Sensing the potential to get this horribly wrong, Cornelius had a brilliant idea. I thank the Lady Black for her welcome advice, and wonder if we could impose on her expertise later, as an advisor. If you could please look over what we have devised for any such unintentional pitfalls. What? She'll just tell Crow everything. Dolores was halted in her latest rant by an enraged Lord Black, on his feet to defend his wife's honor. It just wasn't her night. You are now very close to insulting my wife, the Lady Black. She is a professor and respected author. Who are you to cast aspirations on her honesty? You had to do one thing tonight, and couldn't even manage that properly. My godson now finds himself part of this tournament, and we have people here trying to deny him his blades during the tasks. I think the sooner you're gone, the more chance this tournament has of being a success. That this actually led to cheering meant Dolores's goose was well and truly cooked. She would drop off her latest report on Saturday, hoping she had done enough to please the Dark Lord. Knowing it was time to quit while ahead, Cornelius was anxious to finish this quickly. He also knew Emmas would be bitterly disappointed Cedric wouldn't now be competing, and tried to fix that too. The judges for the competition shall be all three heads of establishments, the ministerial organizer of the tournament and the chief warlock. I shall see everyone for the first task on Halloween, followed by the feast. This would give them just over 4 weeks to have someone in place to take over from Dolores and then organize the last two tasks. With the announcement now over, there was a shift in momentum as people surged forward to congratulate the champions. Of course, Hermione got to Harry first. After their kiss, she couldn't help but pull him up on his tournament participation. So much for our quiet year. It's only 3 tasks, love. That shouldn't disrupt our training and studies too much. Dolores couldn't resist spoiling their moment. There are actually some other engagements, and a ball being arranged too. No. Harry was now in this obnoxious witch's face. I will compete in 3 tasks, nothing more than that. There are no contracts to hold over our heads, so we would have to be asked to do more. My answer is no. Augusta physically pushed Dolores away from Harry before she could cause any more damage, knowing there would be no shifting the Centurion once he dug his heels in. Harry, there will be a meet the press session, and we were thinking of a Yule ball. After the success of last night, it now seems a great idea. He had to look to Hermione, not understanding what Augusta meant. Yule means Christmas, Harry. His head whipped around to face the old lady he thought of as family. Augusta, I'm counting the days until I can see Jamie again. There is no chance of me spending the holidays here. I know very little about Christmas. What I do know is that it's for family. We will be spending ours with our family. I hope the Longbottoms will be there too. This saw interference from an even more unpleasant quarter. Jamie? I don't think I've heard that name before. Hermione's arm around Harry was the only thing stopping him attacking Dumbledore. There was a line, though, that even Hermione's influence wouldn't be able to stop Harry. Just mentioning their brother's name put Dumbledore close to crossing that line. Jamie is my baby brother, someone you will never get near, old man. I don't want you near any of my family. Augusta once more was in Dumbledore's face. You just can't let things go, can you, Albus? You admitted in front of everyone you knew Sirius wasn't the Potter secret keeper. Then, mere minutes ago, you tried to have Harry face the first task, unarmed. Do we even have to ask how his name ended up in the goblet in the first place? Your kindly godfather persona doesn't work here. We all know you're a despicable old... Augusta needed a deep, calming breath before she could continue. You nearly had me swearing in front of my students. Keep your crooked nose out of our business. You are not welcome anywhere near our families. Taking a deep breath himself, Hermione's arms still around his waist helping immensely. Harry regained full control and ignored Dumbledore, choosing instead to speak with the Durmstrang champion. Victor, Hermione and I, along with our two best friends, train every morning in facilities Hogwarts provides for us. You and Fleur are welcome to join us. I wouldn't like people thinking the Hogwarts champion had advantages not available to the other two. They all saw Crumb's eyes light up at that. I would love to accept. I was worried how to keep fitness up living on ship. Thank you, Centurion. Offering his hand, he also offered something more. My friends call me Harry, Victor. They shook hands as Fleur approached. I have never done this training before. What is it? That was Padma's cue. Oh, you'll love it. We get up in the middle of the night, run for miles, and then either fire spells at each other or clash swords. Harry introduced Padma and Neville to his fellow champions, before confirming she was basically correct in her description of how they trained. Fleur paled before confirming she would still give it a try. With the other two champions doing so, she would be letting Beauxbaton down if she didn't at least attempt this. Harry was being congratulated by the rest of his family when Henrica found herself with the Beauxbaton champion standing beside her. Miss Delacour, what do you think of Hogwarts? I do not think I have been more confused in my life. Henrica couldn't help but chuckle at the amount of feelings the young witch put into that statement. Let me guess, your parents warned you about how Britain was such a backward country. Then you get here and it's not what you were expecting. How could you know that? Because, 3 years ago, that was me. My parents were very worried about Avila teaching in Hogwarts. Only my connections with the goblins eased their minds. I arrived here and found things changing right in front of my eyes. Now I'm married to a lord, have a wonderful baby, and my parents are frequent visitors who love our extended family. My daughter's godfather, who is also technically my employer, is the Hogwarts champion and responsible for starting a lot of these changes. We have heard a lot of stories about Harry, and they are probably all true. Drop by our quarters anytime I'm not teaching and we can have a chat. I would like that, very much. You are welcome. I vividly remember what it's like to be 17 in Vila. It was a very happy Fleur who headed back to the Beauxbaton carriage with Madame Maxine. She wouldn't be so happy getting up at 5:30 in the morning. The Lady Ravenclaw was waiting on Victor and Fleur at the entrance hall the next morning. The ghost led them up to the room where the ball had been held, only for the door to open on something completely different. If anything, the room was bigger, with a running track around its edges. The four already there were doing stretches to warm up. Both witches headed straight for Fleur as Victor took off his robe and joined the boys. We didn't think you would have the proper clothes for this. I know I didn't have a clue when Neville and I started training. We were running around a tropical island though, nothing can compare to that. Padma was pulling stuff out her ever-present bag that she and Hermione had put together. You will probably have to resize these, but they will do until you can get some of your own. The Beauxbaton champion was staring at what these witches were wearing, and wondering if she was being pranked here. I would not know where even to look for clothes like this. Oh, we can help you with that too. Hogwarts, could we have a changing room, please? Watching Fleur's face as the room obliged was priceless. Hermione was so used to the special magic of the castle, she forgot it could shock even people who'd known magic all their lives. 36 minutes later, Fleur was sure she was going to die. Both witches helped her over to a seat and handed her a bottle containing iced water. Don't worry about it, you need to build this up. Hermione has been doing this with Harry every day since she was 11. Neville and I only started last summer. Try and relax, take deep breaths, and try also to remember this will do you good. Eventually. She sat there watching as they continued running. Fleur felt slightly better when a winded Victor eventually joined her. She handed him a bottle of water from Padma's wonderful bag. The two champions sat and looked on in disbelief as the four now increased their pace. I thought I was fit, those witches easily beat me. Padma says Hermione has been doing this every day with Harry since he were 11. No wonder they are so fit and so very close. You noticed that too. All four are very close. I think both couples are bonded. They had stopped running but were not for resting. Their blades came off their backs and training continued. Harry was clearly the teacher, but to untrained eyes the other three looked very competent with their blades too. To finish, the three attacked Harry, and Hermione's shriek of triumph, when her blade nicked his upper arm, told both watchers this was an unusual occurrence. Strolling over, Harry casually took a towel out his bag and wiped the trickle of blood away. Hermione then applied some dittany and the cut was healed. That was magnifique. What? No, that was Harry holding back, way back. Both champions looked at Padma as if she was mad. Guys, we can spare 5 minutes. Why don't you give Fleur and Victor a glimpse of what they're really up against? Hermione's armor activated as she drew her sword. Oh, feisty this morning, don't let that lucky strike fool you, Granger. Scared, Crow? You should be. The two then went at each other at full speed, a golden Harry moving like lightning. Victor was on his feet, but Neville was right at his side. Easy there, Victor, everything is okay. It looks brutal, but she is in no danger whatsoever. If she was, neither Padma nor I would be standing here. Harry is a goblin and would kill any man who laid a hand on Hermione. He certainly won't cause her any harm. Your compatriot was very lucky. No one touches Hermione. It looks so... Yeah, I know. Hermione is now an expert with her blade, but Harry is a master. A yelp from Hermione ended the match. Harry was kissing her before lovingly tending her small cut. Now that there's magnificent, Harry's eyes never left Hermione as he answered Victor. My people call her their warrior princess, young or old. They have taken my Hermione to their hearts. Smart, beautiful, brave, and deadly with a sword or a wand. How could they not? He then gently kissed his mate before turning his attention to their guests. We do this every morning though, don't do blade or wand work on our extra training days. You are welcome to join us for those too. Neville interrupted immediately. Harry, it's moody this week. Oh, then we'll give that a miss. What is this moody? It was Padma who replied. All joking now put aside. Moody is a who, Victor. Master Alastair Moody, a very dangerous wizard who trains us once a month. He would probably use the Imperius on you two, and then have you both attack us. His justification would be that this was standard Death Eater practice, something we need to be prepared for. A horrified Fleur looked to the other three to dispute this. Instead, she got nods of agreement. Why would you put yourselves through these? Harry was standing with his arms around Hermione and answered at once. Because of me. Voldemort wants me dead. These three are determined to stand beside me if he tries to make that happen. He gave his mate a reassuring squeeze before telling these two just what was going on. We're currently trying to work out whether Voldemort was involved in any way with my name being in this tournament. We don't think so, though, because he has so little resources, and Dumbledore is currently in the castle. The Merlin Ball is now an occasion that the castle's ghosts look forward to as well. They love to see the students enjoying themselves. We think Dumbledore sneaked in then and placed my name in the cup. Whether his aim was to force me to renounce my heritage, or just so he could have some influence over my life, we don't yet know. Hermione was in front of Harry, facing away but leaning into him as his arms were around her waist. If either one of them wants a piece of you, they're going to have to go through me first." Padma instantly corrected her best friend. "Us, Hermione. Us." The two champions were making their way out the castle when Fleur felt she just had to comment on what they'd seen this morning. "Do you get the feelings this tournament is nothing more than a little side issue for Harry? I think I better catch the snitch in these Quidditch matches. Durmstrang's chances of winning the tournament just got a lot worse." Discovering that Fleur wasn't on the Beauxbatons Quidditch team, the unanimous decision was that any game involving Victor would be played first. The Hufflepuff-Durmstrang match was arranged for the 15th, with the Slytherin-Beauxbatons game the following week, allowing Victor 2 weeks recovery time before facing the first task. The French champion was getting used to her morning exercises. She didn't think the word like would ever enter the equation. She had spent her free time studying the enigma that Harry was to her. He was every inch a warrior, yet having his goddaughter in his arms showed a completely different side to his character. She also couldn't miss how devoted some of the students were to him, especially those wearing silver crow badges and those on Potter scholarships. Fleur was struggling to understand how this incredibly busy person always made time to catch up with these younger students. He even danced with each of the scholarship girls at the ball. She had no trouble understanding how they loved him for that. It was time to see if she could get some answers to these questions. It was time to visit Lady Black. Henrika had been expecting this visit from Fleur ever since she made her offer. She also wasn't surprised at the main subject of their discussion. "You are making the classic mistake we have all made at one point or another, assigning wizarding values to a goblin. Make no mistake, that's what Harry is. A centurion too." Seeing the blank expression this generated brought the teacher in Henrika to the fore. Harry's been raised as a goblin. His morals, values, and the code by which he lives his life by are pure goblin. Harry being a centurion is probably his proudest achievement. To understand that, however, you need to know more of what that position entails. Henrika was a born teacher. She loved that moment when you gave a student enough information that would allow them to connect the dots for themselves. It's not something awarded purely on his skill with a blade. There is so much more to being a centurion than that. Centurions are leaders, but again not just by issuing commands. They are leaders by example. How they live their lives is as important as how they handle a blade. The Goblin Society is an ancient one, and Merlin was a friend to the nation. I personally think the Arthurian knights were based on centurions. Having Fleur look at her as if she were mad, saw Henrika chuckle. "I always tell my students not to believe everything I say, but to research from different sources and form their own opinions. Unfortunately, in this case, there are no other sources." She rose and returned with a book in her hand. "This is the only known work on the goblins. It's written by me. That was why Minister Fudge asked for my help in checking the tasks. Had they even attempted to take Hermione as a hostage, there would have been a riot. She is a very capable witch in her own right, but together those four are an awesome force. I'm just glad it wasn't her name that came out of that goblet. There would have been blood on the floor and hordes of goblin warriors at the castle gates. I have been training with them every morning. Tomorrow we are sharing their lesson too. Oh, you'll like Bill Weasley, former Hogwarts head boy before becoming a curse breaker for Gringotts. 3 years ago he was brought back from Egypt to train Harry and his friends. He taught their entire year group too, up until Remus started. He's now assistant ambassador to Harry's father, Barchoke. Fleur's pout would have seen most of the wizards in Hogwarts falling over themselves to put right whatever had caused it. This is not fair. This more I learn about Harry, the more confused I get. Henrika wanted to be sure there were no misunderstandings about the most important thing. You do know he and Hermione will be together for life? Yes. Hermione's Harry's soul. I do not need to be Vila to see that. I have a little sister starting school next year, watching Harry with the younger students. Ah, I see. Harry counts the Potter scholars as family, and will look after them the way an older brother would. This had Henrika chuckling for a moment before she explained what was funny to the younger Vila. When Sirius and I started dating, an 11-year-old Harry asked him what his intentions were toward me, since I'm employed by the Lily Potter Foundation. Sirius said it felt like being questioned by my brother. At 11 he asked his own godfather that question.
That's who Harry is.
When he regards you as a friend, you have a friend for life. When he counts you as family, then Harry would do anything for you. You can easily tell the people Harry counts as family, they would all do anything for him too. Fleur left with a lot more knowledge, but was still every bit as confused. Were she to write home recommending Hogwarts as a better option for Gabrielle, her parents would drag her home thinking she was ill or mad. She would be reading the Lady Black's book from cover to cover. The couple of copies of the Dumbledore book would soon make the rounds inside the carriage. Fleur and Victor practically being carried into the Great Hall caused a fair bit of alarm, though not from the Hogwarts contingent. Those long legs of Madame Maxime's getting her there ahead of anyone else. "What is the meaning of this? What have you done to my student?" The four friends let Bill deal with that one. He was supposed to be a diplomat. "Absolutely nothing, madame. Fleur is merely exhausted. We tried to warn her this was something you needed to build up to, but she threw herself right in there. She is a credit to your school." Bill's charm was wasted on a limp. She turned her gaze onto Harry. "Are you trying to kill off Sada champions before the tournament begins? Is Sada you plan to win?" "Exactly the opposite, Madame Maxime. I offered the other champions access to my training to make the competition more equal. They will just take time to get used to it, and I have already suggested they take whatever break they feel necessary before the first task." Though clearly exhausted, Fleur still tried to defend Harry. "It is true, madame. Harry warned us not to try and keep up. I tried to do so and am now very tired. Victor will agree. Without this extra training, we have no chance. Harry is very, very good." Victor wasn't going to agree with anything. He had fallen asleep where Harry and Neville had left him sitting. A few Durmstrang students then carried him out the hall. Thankfully, Dumbledore was nowhere to be seen. Olympe then apologized for jumping to the wrong conclusion, before escorting an exhausted Fleur back to their carriage. Both champions would spend the rest of their Saturday taking it very easy. Knowing that Crow would be busy training, Dolores chose this time for her trip to Hogsmeade. Her heart was pounding, and with good reason. After placing her report below the same rock she'd chosen weeks ago, Dolores found another letter waiting on her. That this letter would contain more instructions was a safe bet. Dolores was trying to act normal while the note was burning a hole in her pocket. She didn't dare open it until safely back in her Hogwarts room, and rushing straight back to the castle might arouse suspicion. She was going to have to waste some time in Hogsmeade, and anticipating her instructions would make that difficult to do. "Dolores, what brings you to the village?" This shocked Dolores out of her daydreaming. "Albus, should we really be seen together?" "Nonsense, Dolores. We just happened to meet and are having a polite chat. There is also something I wanted to ask you. Why did you put Harry's name in the goblet?" Albus's question had Dolores looking all around to see if anyone had possibly overheard. "What? Don't talk rubbish. Why would you think I did that?" "Well, it's really quite a simple deduction, my dear Dolores. It certainly wasn't me, or anyone from Durmstrang. Maxime would never do it, and everyone in Hogwarts simply loves the boy. Who does that? Leave as a suspect." Dolores thought she was being so clever, knowing everyone would instantly blame Dumbledore. She forgot there would be one person who would know Dumbledore definitely didn't put that name in the goblet, the same Albus Dumbledore, who was now staring right into her eyes. "I just want to know why, Dolores. Why did you put Harry's name in that goblet?" Albus returned to the ship, being greeted by a party of students who couldn't wait to inform him of Victor's condition. As he looked in on his sleeping champion, Albus had absolutely no intention of curtailing Victor's training inside Hogwarts. Lying there in an exhausted sleep was Albus's route into Harry's inner group of friends. Victor would need to lose a limb before he would even think of stopping his training inside Hogwarts. This was an unexpected but very welcome bonus. Albus was certainly not going to throw it away over something as trivial as an exhausted student. being on the judging panel, and now having some influence on the design of tasks 2 and 3, was honestly all Albus had expected. Having Harry as the Hogwarts Triwizard Champion was again unexpected, however a massive bonus to his latest plans. The real bit of unbelievable luck was discovering Dolores was in contact with Tom and had placed Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire under his instructions. When that scheme looked as if it might actually fail, she had goaded the boy until he accepted, unfortunately getting poor Dolores kicked out of Hogwarts at the same time. She was rightfully worried that Tom would see this as a failure on her part. Dolores would no longer be involved with the tournament, therefore unable to pass on information or carry out any tasks the Dark Lord ordered, since she would be forced to leave the castle too. This would certainly leave Dolores in a vulnerable position, and also without the goblin wards to prevent an attack from Tom or his 2 supporters. While his insides had been doing a happy dance to put all his other happy dances to shame, externally Albus had appeared thoughtful as he masterfully entrapped Dolores further into his clutches. His proposal was simplicity itself, often the best way to do things as there is less to go wrong. If Dolores gave Albus all the information she received from Tom, he would then feed her the latest inside news from the tournament to pass on. Dolores could tell Tom that she had some influence on whoever the new appointee was, and claim the information she passed on came from that source. Since Tom wouldn't harm her while she was still useful to him, Dolores fell on Albus's offer like a drowning person would grab at a thrown rope. For no outlay on his part, Albus was now back where he was supposed to be, controlling all sides of the situation. He felt invigorated and could now see himself leaving this ship and moving back into the headmaster's suite in Hogwarts, his rightful place by the end of this tournament. He would need to be prepared though. Tom obviously wanted Harry in this tournament for a reason. Albus's task would be to try and unravel exactly what that reason was and act accordingly. Best case scenario would see a confrontation between the two, with Harry narrowly losing and Albus heroically stepping in to finish off Tom. That would place him back in power once more, and he could use the country's gratitude to start making inroads to these insane laws that had been passed in his absence. Discovering the new Gringotts branch in Hogsmeade was startling, not nearly as shocking though as seeing a couple of goblins walk through the village, and not one Hogsmeade resident batting an eyelid. When Harry fell, that would complete the prophecy. Albus defeating Tom should once more make him the master of the Elder Wand, its powers now absorbed by the blade Dumbledore intended to claim. Albus was sure he could come up with something about wearing it to honor Harry's memory. The wizarding public would just love that angle. Albus thought Harry really only had himself to blame for this now inevitable outcome. Having that Horcrux removed from his head should have meant Harry could survive this, not anymore though. Time and time again he'd spurned Albus's offers of assistance. Now he had publicly spurned his wizarding heritage too. That arse of a minister, Fudge, might have tripped over himself to accept this outrageous outcome, but Albus never would. A prominent old family being headed by someone who'd rather remain true to his goblin upbringing was an affront to their very way of life. Far better the family name be allowed to die out, and that would then see all this goblin nonsense buried along with the body of Harry Crow. While never a supporter of the idea that someone's blood made them superior, Albus certainly believed wizards should be able to lord it over everyone else. There was no doubt in his mind that, being a wizard, he was superior to any other being on the planet, magical or not. It wasn't common knowledge, but Albus had designed the fountain that proudly stood in the center of the atrium in the Ministry of Magic, a not-so-subliminal reminder to everyone who saw it of that very fact. Albus had come across a couple of his students venting their disgust at a goblin female being allowed to attend a ball in Hogwarts. When he'd asked them if they'd said anything at the time, both boys had looked at him as if he was crazy. Harry currently had more control over Hogwarts than Tom Riddle could ever have dreamed of possessing, and was using that control to push his own agenda. An agenda that was rapidly eroding wizarding values which had stood for centuries. That they had even managed to brainwash Severus was a measure of just how far the goblins were prepared to go in order to rule Britain. Something that would never happen while he still drew breath. The Baron of Kingsea was every bit as formidable a foe and now should be considered a far greater danger to Britain as Lord Voldemort. Albus intended to do his best to see that he solved all their country's problems by ensuring these two deadly adversaries faced each other to the death. For the first time in years, Albus felt the tide was finally turning in his favor. Now all he needed to do was use his experience, knowledge and power to grasp the opportunity when it came. Albus Dumbledore was going to be back where he belonged, back on top. He might even let Dolores have a shot at being Minister of Magic. For the greater good of their world, the current incumbent just had to go. After reading the note from Voldemort, Dolores's unexpected good mood simply vanished. She thought the Dark Lord had asked the impossible last time. Getting the goblin into the tournament would be child's play compared to this. She had no idea how to complete this task, though thankfully she now had someone to advise her. Dumbledore had forgotten more about Hogwarts than most people knew. Surely he would know how to go about this. With 2 Quidditch matches, a Hogsmeade weekend, the first task and then the Halloween feast, October was going to be an exciting month in Hogwarts. It was a couple of other events, though, that caught the 4 friends flat-footed. The first was when Ewan was waiting on them as they finished their Saturday lesson. What caught them out was Ewan not actually waiting on them. "Hey Bill, could you do me a big favor? I was sitting talking to Natalie last night and before we knew it, it was curfew. I had my letter for my mum already, but couldn't get up to the Owlery because I'd left it too late. Since you're seeing her tonight, could you pass it on for me?" "Not a problem, Ewan. I promised your mum I would look you up and see how you were settling anyway. You want to go and have lunch?" 4 stunned friends watched the pair happily head off for the Great Hall. Hermione's eyes were drawn to Fleur, though their French friend appeared deflated. "I saw them dancing together at Jamie's christening, but never thought anything of it." "When did that happen?" Harry then attempted to answer Padma's question. "They obviously met at the fair, then Assistant Ambassador Weasley volunteered to help the Abercrombies with their moving house. I didn't know he was still visiting there, but Jenny is a lovely person." At that, Fleur pushed past, her embarrassment clear for all to see. "Okay, I've obviously said something wrong again. Would either of you ladies care to explain exactly what it was to me?" "You didn't say anything wrong, Harry. Fleur just didn't want to hear that Bill was involved with anyone." Hermione then took pity on him and explained exactly what was going on. Fleur's rather taken with Bill. She was actually considering asking him to Hogsmeade at the end of the month. None of us knew he was seeing someone. That's what upset Fleur, not you. Neville was as confused as Harry. "But Hermione, he's a professor. Are students allowed to date professors?" "Well, technically he's not a professor, and Fleur is now of age and considered an adult." Neither Neville nor Harry seemed totally convinced by that argument. Victor kept his own counsel on the matter, wisely saying nothing. Padma and Hermione weren't sure whether to follow their friend or not. Harry suggested waiting until after lunch and speaking with Hendrika about the matter. If anyone would know the best way to handle this, it would be her. That was why Henrika found herself being escorted to Fleur's room by Madame Maxine. "She has been so enjoying herself at Hogwarts. I saw she was upset, but she would not talk to me about the matter." "She might not talk to me about it either, Madame Maxime. I do know why she was upset, though, and can assure you nothing untoward happened. You've seen how Harry reacts if a lady is mistreated. You have nothing to worry about on that front." She found Fleur sitting on her bed, just facing the blank wall. The room was so small that Henrika really had to sit beside her on the bed. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I have made a big fool of myself. How could I have been so stupid?" "That's not what I heard. Your friends are concerned about you and came to me for advice. They told me what happened and you did nothing wrong. I almost asked a professor on a date. What was I thinking?" "You weren't thinking, and you were at least a week or so from asking. Those 4 certainly won't breathe a word of this to anyone else. They came to me because I'm family. I would certainly count Bill as a friend, but even I didn't know he was in a relationship with Jenny Abercrombie." "Harry says she is a nice woman?" "We all thought so. She and Ewan stayed at King Usse for a weekend during the summer. We might be jumping to conclusions here. They may be nothing more than friends." At least I do not have to worry now about him saying non because I am Vila. Oh, that would make no difference to Bill. Jenny is a muggle after all. Ce que vous êtes sérieux, you make joke. Oui? Yes, I'm serious. The fact you're only 17 would worry Bill a lot more than you being Vila. School is full of little boys, only Harry, Neville and Victor do not. How you say, Bever? This saw Henrika smile. I think the word you're looking for is drool. The students were like that with me when I first started. Give them time and it will soon settle down. I do not believe Harry would drool. You're right. Only after Hermione. I know Bill is an attractive man, but you shouldn't be in such a hurry to grow up. If you continue training with Harry's group, you will be seeing him twice a week until summer. Get to know him first, and let him see the real you. Meanwhile, try and have some fun. Hanging out with Harry and the gang will allow you to meet nice people. If they're close to Harry, then you can trust them. Enjoy your time at Hogwarts, and who knows what the future holds. I met Sirius through working with Harry, certainly not something I expected when I arrived in Scotland. This saw Fleur lean in and hug Henrika. Thank you, it is so good to have someone that understands to talk with. You're very welcome. Hermione and Padma sometimes come to me too, which is why they felt secure about mentioning this to me. I could easily see Madame Maxime exploding if you had gone to Hogsmeade with Bill, just before the first task too. This drew a chuckle out of Fleur. An angry Madame Maxime is a very frightening sight. She would tell me I need to focus on the tournament, and she would be correct. By the time Henrika left, Fleur was feeling a lot better about the situation. Harry was still working on the situation. Later on that evening. He pulled Roger aside for a quiet word. Could you do me a favor tomorrow? Fleur has come here looking to make friends. Could you be one of them? Harry, that won't exactly be a hardship, mate. If you hit it off, there's a Hogsmeade weekend coming up. I get the picture, and she's a friend of yours? Fleur is becoming a good friend to both Hermione and I. Gotcha. Best behavior at all times. Roger, if I didn't know that would already be the case, I would have asked someone else. This actually saw the older Ravenclaw smile. Thanks, Harry. I really appreciate that vote of confidence. The second event that would have a far greater effect, the group of 4 friends, happened later that night. The Lady Helena waited until she got Harry alone before speaking to him. Young champion, I think we may have a problem. The castle's elves reported to me that there was another elf shadowing you during your training. They have identified this elf as belonging to that Embridge witch. She has barred the castle's elves from entering her quarters, claiming her elf will look after her needs. So Dolores is spying on us. Not just spying, Harry, we think it's worse than that. Her elf was spotted going through your soiled clothes basket when you left for breakfast. The Hogwarts elves have told me your towel sometimes has blood on it. They are afraid that is what he's after. That seriously upped the ante for Harry. Whatever Dolores Umbridge wanted a sample of his blood for, he was certain it wasn't to do him any good. He sat and spoke to Helena for at least an hour, a plan slowly forming in his head. Harry would certainly send word of this development to his father. They needed more information though before they could do any more. Their first Sunday training went well, Victor and Fleur seeming pleased to discover the other 4 boys weren't miles ahead of them. Last week, neither Fleur or Victor had been up for lessons 2 days in a row. Bill finished with a 6-against-4 battle, and while the young quartet still won, the result was a lot closer than usual. Roger was joking with Fleur that she should bring some friends with her next week. Maybe then they would have a chance. Her laughter encouraged him to say what had been on his mind since Harry mentioned this last night. There's a Hogsmeade weekend coming up at the end of the month. Would you like to accompany me to the village? It won't be just the 2 of us, since there is still a threat of an attack, but we'll have fun as a group. I would like that very much. Will everyone be going? All except Harry, he's on duty. Seeing the blank look from Fleur and that Victor was listening in too, Roger explained his last comment. There will be joint Auror and Goblin patrols in the village for the entire weekend. Auror, Tonks, leads the ministry side of the operation, but Harry's in charge of the nation's response. Occasionally he'll have time to have lunch with us, and his squad of warriors. I suppose it depends on how great they think the likelihood of an attack is. After what happened at the World Cup, I don't expect they'll be taking any chances." This saw Victor shake his head. "The more I learn about Harry, more confused I become." The Ravenclaw could only laugh at this. "He's certainly different from anyone I've ever met before. Last summer, the four of us actually holidayed with his group in Egypt, one of the best experiences of my life. Harry's philosophy is that we're all different, and it's how we embrace those differences that make us who we are. I saw you dancing with his goblin friend at the ball. Sapphire, yes. We first met her in Egypt last year, then she holidayed in Kingersea for a week. She's been back and forth, but her family have now returned to Britain. She's lovely, and certainly one of my friends too. It's funny, but when I'm dancing with her I don't see a goblin, I just see Sapphire." I think that's what Harry meant. Fleur actually took Roger's arm as they left the room. Here was somebody that might actually be able to look past her being Vila and just see Fleur. "I think that is what Harry meant too." Victor followed on, still confused by the enigma that was the youngest champion. Bill watched them go, actually with a fair bit of relief. Ever since the first day he stepped back into Hogwarts, some of the older witches had been making eyes at him. He decided right from the start that dating someone who was still attending Hogwarts was simply something he couldn't do. He'd just mentally added the other two schools to that list when they arrived. Maybe in a couple of years he might find Miss Delacour interesting. Hanging about with Harry's crowd would certainly help her with any growing she had to do. He had the spectacular results of his twin brothers to back that assumption up. Ginny, too, had changed from all recognition to the young witch they were worried about sending to Hogwarts. Even Ron had finally pulled his socks up, gotten himself a girlfriend, and was boring everyone with how he was now the Gryffindor keeper. The opportunity to play against Victor Crumb had his Quidditch-obsessed youngest brother working those same socks off, not wanting to give McGonagall the slightest excuse to prevent him from playing. Their lesson with the Blacks that afternoon soon became a strategy session, with Remus, Tonks, and Augusta all being invited to hear what the Lady Helena had warned them of. None of them were happy about the blood issue, and Harry would be practicing with his armor activated until they discovered just what was going on here. They had a plan for dealing with that failing, a plan they spent the afternoon refining. It was the following Saturday before they could put those plans into action. Even though there was currently a Quidditch match taking place, the four were still training. Fleur, not being a fan, deciding that's what she wanted to do too. The Lady Helena entered their training room to inform them the event they were waiting for had just taken place. The four stopped at once. Their swords were soon on their backs, and they were ready to go. "Fleur, could we ask you a favor? Could you stay here until our normal finishing time? We don't want anyone realizing we left this room." The French champion quickly agreed as the four left. The room then provided a couple of comfy chairs and refreshments. "I get the feeling this is nothing to do with the tournament." "You would be right, Fleur, those four have other things on their minds." This left the French champion shaking her head. "I am worried more because we do not know what we will be facing. Do you think Harry has any idea? If he had, he would have told you. Harry will certainly want to win for the honor of Hogwarts, but he would find no honor in cheating to do so. I've gotten to know him pretty well in the last few years. I also work for his father. Those two are more alike than you would believe possible." Fleur had decided to take Henrika's advice and spent a very pleasant morning chatting with Bill. Dolores was very careful as she meandered toward Hogsmeade, continually stopping to look around the spectacular countryside. In reality, she was making sure she wasn't being followed as Dolores got ready to make her drop under the rock. For all she was being careful though, not once did she ever think to look up. If she had, Dolores might have noticed she had a feathered aerial escort. Her drop finally done, she then headed off down the path to the village. They had certainly considered this possibility, and then planned accordingly. Sabre and Buff found suitable trees to perch in, keeping a close eye on whatever Umbridge had placed under that rock. Hover and Swift continued following the witch down to the village. The Hawk and the Owl easily spotted the dark-haired little girl in the yellow polka-dot dress, skipping toward the rock from the direction of the station. She appeared to be about 8 or 9, and was singing to herself as she skipped in time to her own beat. It was almost too casual the way she sat on that specific rock to pretend to take something out of her shoe. Both birds of prey easily spotted the girl lift the small roll of parchment, slipping it under her dress and into her knickers. As the girl headed back the way she came, Saber and Buff were careful to stay far enough behind that they wouldn't scare away whoever she was going to meet. She eventually reached the station, sitting dangling her legs over the edge of the platform. The two birds again took up positions where they could see everything. What they eventually saw was shocking and caught both of them unawares. The little girl began growing before their very eyes, and suddenly she wasn't so little anymore. Sitting wearing a child's dress that now looked obscene on her, Bellatrix Lestrange stood and waved. Saber was already moving, with only the hawk's faster speed enabling her to intercept Beth before the tawny owl could reach the person he detested most in the entire world. With Lestrange portkeying away, Saber managed to keep her enraged mate in the air, both birds of prey setting off for the castle. Harry and Hermione entered the Black's apartment and immediately understood something was really wrong. Padma was sitting on Neville's lap, her arms lovingly wrapped around him as she whispered in his ear. The problem, though, was Neville sitting there, rigid with anger and wearing a face like thunder. The newcomers didn't have to wait too long to discover the problem. Neville had clearly been waiting on them. Umbridge is working with Voldemort. Bellatrix Lestrange picked up the message herself. She was polyjuiced to look like a little girl. The bitch changed back and then portkeyed away before I could get to her. The anger was dripping off every syllable Neville uttered. His mate again tried to alleviate his pain. Neville, honey, she was being watched. That's why she waved, and why I stopped you attacking her. We need a plan to take her and her accomplice out, and I want the four of us there when we do. She's a psycho. Neville, we don't give her any chances whatsoever. Harry had his knife out, sending a signal to his father that he needed to talk to him. Tonks, could you see if Amelia is available? I've just sent for my father. We need to have a war council to see what our next move is. Hermione then filled them in on what else had happened. Umbridge also met someone in Hogwarts. She had tea with Albus Dumbledore. That got Tonks moving. Augusta suggested they might want Alice and Frank here too. Her suggestion received a unanimous yes. The meeting was now in the headmistress's office. The castle's elves had provided food, but few were hungry. Harry was sitting with Astrid in his arms, yet Hermione wasn't the only one who could see his mind was on other things. What those things were soon became apparent as the meeting got underway. Everyone was brought up to date with the information they had before Harry got right to the heart of the matter. What we need to decide first is whether we are going to take out Lestrange or play along and hope to end this once and for all. He wasn't surprised that Neville was glaring at him for even suggesting not taking her down. Harry certainly owed him an explanation. Neville, hitting Lestrange leaves 2/3 of the job still to do. Her watcher will be somewhere in the mountains with a pair of omnioculars. If he's disillusioned and laying still, we would never find him. Certainly not in the time we had available. That would see them move locations at once, leaving any information we got out of her useless. It doesn't take any imagination to see Riddle and Rookwood having a revenge-killing spree against soft targets. While they're focusing on whatever it is they are attempting, the rest of the country is free from any attacks. Harry, I know what you're saying makes sense. I just have a blind spot where she is concerned. Lestrange is the last survivor of those who attacked my family. I want her to pay for that, and everything else she's done. His mother was first to try and help her son see through this. I would love to put a bullet in her myself, Neville, but it all comes back to Voldemort. This time we know he's mortal. Kill him and he's gone for good. That has to be our main objective here, though I certainly hope that bitch goes down with him. It was Hermione who tried to move the conversation in a different direction. The fact they are after Harry's blood has me really worried. Whatever we decide here will only work if we can anticipate what their plans are. Otherwise, Harry could be getting left out there as some sort of sacrificial goat. That is so not happening. Dumbledore's involvement in this also makes me feel sick. We're getting Umbridge out the castle, but he's still going to be here, and that old goat is far more dangerous in every way than the toad. Birchoke could be honest with his children. He'd learned from his mistake with Lestrange's pregnancy. The only thing we can see Harry's blood being needed for is wards. Whether that's to portkey Harry through them, or possibly to produce some sort of masking device that lets them gain access, we simply don't have enough information at the moment. This got Harry's attention immediately. He was thinking of 3 grangers who were behind these wards. Do you think they could produce some kind of low-key talisman? Amelia had been shocked at what she'd heard here today. She would certainly need to inform Cornelius about this. There was information she could pass on to the group, however. Information they needed before plans could be made. Through physical evidence left behind, and then interviewing the Carrows, we discovered exactly how they escaped from Azkaban. Rookwood carved himself a runes-powered protection disc out of the rock plinth that was his bed. He completed the unbelievably complex task entirely from memory, and actually pulled out his own teeth to use as carving tools. He and Lestrange then blood-bonded in her cell to allow the protection to include her as well. Rookwood and Riddle are certainly intellectually capable of just about anything. Where Dumbledore fits into this whole mess, I have no idea. This had given Hermione an idea, however. With Harry and I being blood-bonded, will whatever they do affect me too? I haven't put myself through all this training to be left sitting on the sidelines now. Their father had bad news for them, though. I'm sorry, my daughter, for something like this, the blood bond would only come into play once it was finalized. Well, that only leaves us one option. Hermione's comment seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room, with the only sound being that of jaws hitting the floor. Ever since the night he'd asked her to be his girlfriend, Harry had been quite happy to let Hermione set the pace of their growing physical relationship. This, though, seemed a step too far, too quickly, and certainly not something they wanted to be announcing to their family. It was probably to be expected that Padma would be the first to come back at her best friend. That's a bit bold, Hermione, even for someone who put a Dementor to the sword. Hermione was wondering why she was getting strange looks from her family, and also had no idea what Padma was referring to. Bold? What are you on about? Having sex with Harry to complete your bond? What? Are you nuts? I said no such thing. Then how do you propose to be by Harry's side? Simple, by making sure my blood is on that towel too. Did you all think the same as Padma? It was actually Henrika who answered, thinking she had the best chance of doing so without hurting anyone's feelings. Hermione, there is not one person in this room who doesn't think you would do absolutely anything to help keep Harry safe. I'm really sorry, but I never saw that simple solution either. Padma got up and hugged Hermione. You know that is going to be one bloody towel. I love your idea, and it saves me having to sleep with Harry to get into this fight. In your dreams, Patel? She looked round at Neville. Well, actually no, neither could hold their laughter any longer. That both their mates were now blushing just added to their amusement, and also released a lot of tension from the room. If these 4 were still laughing and joking with each other, then things couldn't be too bad. I don't remember any decision being made where we don't just arrest who we can, far less let any blood leave this castle. I'll tell you right now, I will need to be convinced before even considering that option. There are also 2 sets of parents missing who certainly deserve to be involved in this decision too. The Sirius just put everyone back on track. Harry actually agreed with his godfather. Okay, let's look at the threats. A portkey is certainly a threat we need to take seriously. The chances of anyone being able to slip me one inside Hogwarts are pretty slim. The castle will protect its champion. That Voldemort wanted me in this tournament would seem to suggest that's where the move will come from. We need to be all over it. The Triwizard tournament is no longer a game. It could be a means to end this once and for all. Amelia, do you think the minister would go along with that? Harry, to help bring down Voldemort, Cornelius would give you anything you wanted. I'm assuming you have something in mind? Astrid had now fallen asleep in Harry's arms. She was probably the only person in the room who didn't experience a shiver down her spine at the expression her godfather wore as he answered, Amelia. Riddle thinks he's setting a trap. I want him walking right into an ambush. Can I ask if the first task could fit into a stadium? I don't think I would be revealing any secrets if I said yes. What's on your mind? If we had a stadium, like the one built in Kinnesy over the summer, we could have 5,000 people at the tasks. This, of course, would see security increased, wards strengthened and a few surprises standing by. Dan, Father and Frank waiting on any appearance from Riddle with rifles in their hands certainly springs to mind. This got a big double thumbs up from Frank. He wasn't going to pass up a chance to put a bullet in the Lestrange bitch. Barchoke too approved of that idea. The grin he wore was predatory. Harry was sure that idea would win approval, but he had even more. If we build this stadium, it would then seem logical to base all 3 tasks around it. Let the 3 champions put on a show for all the people that would come to watch. Have the Ministry chosen anyone to replace Umbridge yet? Amelia was shaking her head at that. We have a short list but haven't approached anyone yet. Something tells me we won't have to bother anymore. This got a nod from Harry as he made his suggestion known. The less people who know what we're up to, the better. Augusta is already on the panel. We need someone else on there to back her up and block Dumbledore at every turn. I was going to suggest an order of Merlin holding Aurora, one who knows every inch of the castle grounds and who assisted at Kingersea over the summer. All eyes now turned to a totally shocked Tonks. Amelia, though, was thinking this could really work. She's already in the castle and Dumbledore will think he can take advantage of her youthful inexperience. Mooney's already done that. This saw Sirius receive smacks to the head from both his wife and his cousin. Neville now wanted involved in this too, and had an idea how to achieve his aims. Harry, I know you never want to take someone close to a goblin as a hostage. What if there were volunteers involved? Volunteers that you had to reach but who would be in no danger. That could get us in there with you in case Voldemort makes a move. Padma made a move that saw her betrothed getting kissed. While Padma was busy, Hermione was running that idea through her head and liking where those thoughts were going. Neville, that's brilliant. Harry, say yes. When his mate looked at him like that, Harry had trouble refusing her anything. Providing they're in no danger from the tournament, I think it's a great idea. With the first task being in 2 weeks, and Voldemort not having any blood yet, I think we can assume whatever he's planning won't happen then. We take precautions but step them up for tasks 2 and 3. That conclusion found general agreement amongst the group, though Barchoke took it further. With you now involving Hermione in this, the fact that will be there with a gun in his hand might be the only reason they'll approve. We will certainly be scanning everything to ensure there are no portkeys there. Some of Harry's blood on the bullets should see them pass straight through any wards bound to the same substance. Remus, Sirius, could you come up with a set of those mirrors that could keep all 3 shooters in touch with each other? We'll need to know who to target, and that could depend on where they appear. Being a keen shooter and having competed in the Kingersea Stadium, Amelia could certainly see the merits of this option. None of the people in this room wanted to see Harry duel Voldemort. A bullet through the bastard's head worked just fine for them. We could build shooting platforms into the roof. They could be easily hidden and strategically placed to give all 3 shooters a wide field of fire. If we build the stadium exactly the same as Kingersea, the open end should face the castle. This would give us the arena and the area in between to set the second and third task, with everyone still being able to see what was happening. Tonks thought if she was going to be involved, it was time to add her opinion. She didn't expect Amelia and Augusta to begin chuckling at her. Sorry, Tonks, that's a great idea. What tickled me was the original plans for the second task. Amelia actually dissolved into laughter, leaving Augusta to fill everyone else in on what was so funny. The second task was to be under the Black Lake. The audience would have been sitting staring at nothing for the entire task. With the experience of the fair under their belts, everyone there could instantly see what a bad idea that would be. Henrika had just put Astrid in her crib for the night, and she had another reason to think that was a terrible idea. What idiot was going to have Avila performing underwater? Please don't tell me there would have been a hostage down there. Fleur would need to rescue. This ended the laughter and gave Amelia another idea. I think we need the Lady Black on the task design panel too. She is the wizarding world's recognized expert on matters of a goblin nature, and also Avila. Since 2 of our champions fall into those categories, we need her on board. Why waste time designing a task, only for her to tell us we got something fundamentally wrong? Having her involved from the beginning should avoid that problem, and also save time. Augusta was in complete agreement. Playing the Vila card should get Madame Maxime on board. Since Henrika was going to look over the task anyway, Dumbledore won't be able to object too much to her being involved from the beginning. He'll try, though, hoping to squeeze some concessions out of us over other matters. I'd like to squeeze his scrawny neck. Henrika's outburst had a smile on Amelia's lips. Which is another excellent reason to have you on the panel. You may have to get in line, though. With more ideas being thrown around, a plan of sorts slowly came together. Amelia would need to inform the minister and Chief Warlock of what was discussed here, but didn't foresee any problems. She hoped to return on Monday when construction of the stadium would begin. Since this had already been done before, Amelia was certain it would be ready for the Quidditch match next Saturday. It was just a pity they hadn't thought of it sooner. That Victor Crumb had been playing today would easily have filled every seat in the stadium. The four would wait until just before the Hogsmeade weekend before supplying Umbridge with their blood. Barchoke would arrange to have her observed making her drop, since all four would need to be in the village over the weekend. This was Crow's Marauders' first visit to Hogsmeade. Their trainers not being there would certainly be noticed. Harry might be on duty, but the other three would do their best to ensure that Luna, Colin and the rest of them had a good time. The idea of placing a tracking charm on whatever Umbridge left was mooted, only to eventually be dismissed. Whoever picked that package up was unlikely to take it straight to wherever they were hiding. It was a safe bet they would take the package somewhere else, before casting every detection charm they could at it. Discovering a tracking charm would instantly tell Voldemort and co. that they were rumbled, leaving the Ministry and its allies right back at square one again. They would achieve the same result from arresting Umbridge. No one believed Dolores knew where Voldemort was hiding. As the meeting was breaking up, Harry had one last thing to say. I don't want any more information about the tasks than the other two champions. What I would say, though, is that the first task will need to be in the afternoon. We all have potions in the morning. Amelia wasn't sure whether she was being pranked, but the other three all confirmed Harry's opinion. Master Pitsley would never let a little thing like a tournament interrupt his lesson. With that, it was time to leave. The excitement inside Hogwarts was growing at roughly the same rate as the magnificent new stadium, now rising majestically out of the ground about 100 yards from the main gate. All week, any free periods the students had were spent watching the new Hogwarts facility undergoing construction. Phileas had even taken his OWL students down to observe some of the practical applications of what they were learning in his class. The Ministry had scored a massive public relations coup by announcing this was a gift to Hogwarts. A gift to say thank you for all their hard work in the last few years. Hard work that had certainly turned the school around. They didn't actually come out and say from the mess Dumbledore dragged the school into they didn't need to. Everyone got the message. That Dumbledore was actually back in Hogwarts at the moment allowed the Ministry to publicly and politically poke him one in the eye. The other major coup was allowing Hogwarts students the opportunity of inviting their parents to the first task of the Triwizard Tournament. Once Augusta could confirm numbers, the Ministry would then know how many tickets it had available for allocation. There would also be a percentage of that allocation heading for Gringotts too. There was, after all, a goblin champion in the tournament. Severus was continually looking around him, amazed at the changes wrought in such a small space of time. If the Ministry putting the parents of Hogwarts students above their own greedy needs wasn't enough, Severus didn't have to look very far for more examples of radical change. Draco would be playing Seeker for Slytherin on Saturday, on a broom loaned to him by Crow and with the entire school backing his efforts. Yes, they were playing Beauxbaton, and as everyone had expected, Durmstrang beat Hufflepuff, but the sight of Gryffindor's supporting Slytherin had Severus thinking he'd gotten some potions ingredients mixed up. He simply had to be hallucinating. Tonks was smiling at him. Don't worry, Severus, we all get moments like that. I saw you space out there while staring at what's in front of us. The atmosphere inside Hogwarts has changed beyond all recognition since the time I was a student here. Henrika's been in the castle since the start of the changes, and even she struggles with it sometimes. I can't help but wonder what it will be like by the time my goddaughter attends Hogwarts. That she lovingly held Astrid in her arms focused Severus's thoughts in that direction too. My godson is like a different person now. Without his father's influence, Draco has been allowed to grow into the outstanding young wizard I always knew was in there. The influences of the people he now listens to are having a far better effect on him. Henrika was sitting beside Tonks, watching the two marauders at the Gryffindor table chatting animatedly with the Weasley twins. It's not only Draco who's being affected, Severus, it's spreading throughout the entire school. By all accounts, Fred and George Weasley were a couple of terrors. Now look at them. Prefects, marauder trainers, and they are currently sitting down there trying to sell Sirius and Remus on the idea of funding a joke shop. As you can probably imagine, that's not going to be a hard sell to our two big kids. While Tonks could only smile at the apt description of their two wizards, that joke shop idea horrified Severus. Oh dear, I can hardly imagine some of the things those two could come up with. Master Pitsley says those two are mavericks who will either go on to be very rich or blow up half of Diagon Alley. Who's to say they won't do both? Henrika found Severus's dry wit to be highly amusing, especially since it had lost all of its sarcastic undertones. They might blow Hogsmeade up instead. Sirius thinks that's where the greatest opportunities now lie. This saw both Severus and Tonks looking for Henrika to explain that view. You can buy land and build premises to your exact specifications, without many of the restrictions having a shop in the alley places on you. This Saturday's Quidditch match won't have visitors, but the plan is to roll that out over the rest of the games, as well as the 3 tasks. Not only will Hogsmeade still have all the traditional weekend visits from Hogwarts students, in future years there will now be thousands of parents passing through the village every time there's a Quidditch match scheduled. It's all wheels within wheels. The stadium helps Hogwarts, creates passing business which will help regenerate Hogsmeade, and lets parents see their children throughout the year. That is the perfect example of the way things work now. Everyone benefits. Severus was finding it hard to argue with any of that. The proof was staring him in the face. As he looked around Hogwarts, he could see the benefits for himself. Since they wouldn't be training over the Hogsmeade weekend, the 4 did their usual and gave the Quidditch match a miss. They also didn't leave their training to follow Umbridge. Father had Rita keeping an eye on that situation. After her encounter at the Parkinson house, however, nothing could convince Rita to try and follow Lestrange if she appeared. Rita had no intention of going anywhere near that crazy witch, far less trying to hitch a ride to Voldemort's hideout. A Slytherin win against Bose Baxtons restored some Hogwarts pride, and now had all minds focused on the following weekend. Fleur and Victor had then found themselves being invited to Crow's Marauders meeting on Monday evening. Both stood astonished as the 4 put the club through its paces. It was the bit of magic the room provided at the end, though, that impressed the hell out of everyone. Their wind-down session suddenly incorporated a scaled-down model of Hogsmeade Village, with the entire thing labeled and color-coded. I know everyone here is looking forward to visiting Hogsmeade. That doesn't mean, though, you should forget everything we've taught you. If an alarm sounds, get yourselves inside one of the buildings colored green. You will notice the Shrieking Shack and Hogsmeade Station are coded red. These areas are out of bounds. They are just too far away from any protected buildings. Should an attack happen, anyone visiting there could be caught out in the open. Remember too, your emergency portkeys will get you to safety if you need them. Having been taught tactics in this room for over 2 years, all could easily see Harry was right about the lack of cover. Their badges were still charmed as portkeys, and would transport them to a secure room in Gringotts. Auror Tonks will have teams of Aurors on site. I will be leading squads of warriors through the village too. Should an alarm sound, I don't want to hear of anyone trying to play hero. Get yourself to shelter and let us deal with it. We teach you how to get away from trouble, and not to go looking for it. That's what you will do at the weekend. Harry found a hand appearing on his shoulder, while a very familiar one also slipped into his. Hermione and Padma knew why Harry was doing this. Crow's Marauders was practically family to him now. He was determined nothing was going to happen to them, even if he had to scare each of them a little to ensure that. Hermione was going to say something before realizing she didn't have to. The entire membership of the club was smiling at him, understanding exactly what was being said here. Luna stepped forward and kissed Harry's cheek. "We'll be careful, Harry, I promise." I know you will, Luna. It's others I'm worried about. Colin here still has those Gryffindor tendencies. This got some chuckles, but a smiling Colin joked right back. Yeah, I keep forgetting you need to be in Ravenclaw to slay trolls, basilisks and dementors. That got some more laughs. Being a Marauders trainer had really seen Colin start to mature, which was why Harry had singled him out here tonight. He was certain Colin would act responsibly, but it was a reminder to those who might not. As the happy students left, Sirius and the two champions approached the four friends. You worried about an attack at the weekend, Harry? It's my job to worry, Sirius. All indications of the risk of an attack are very low. That doesn't mean we get complacent, though. We nearly lost Luna once. Once was certainly more than enough for me. Tonks is having a map made to go over this at dinner on Friday. I just wanted to make sure our lot heard it from us. No heroics. Everyone rushes to the nearest safe building and lets us deal with it. Voldemort comes after any of mine. Trust me, I'll deal with it. The focus and ferocity with which Harry made that declaration certainly let Fleur and Victor see where his true purpose lay. They could now understand Harry's attitude that the tournament was nothing more than a game he wouldn't even miss his potions class for. Compared to the mammoth task he seemed to have set himself, the tournament was mere child's play. As they walked towards their morning training, Hermione had switched to Goblin in case anyone was listening. Are you sure about this plan, Harry? Why don't we give them squirrel blood or something? I have 136 reasons for doing this, Hermione. Starting with little B. Potter and the rest of the murdered Potters, 3 Dursleys tortured to death, the attack on Diagon Alley and then the World Cup. 136 people have lost their lives, wizards, goblins and muggles, women and children. It makes no difference to these monsters. I have killed, Hermione, but each of those 136 innocents murdered haunts me just as much as those lives I took. What do you think Riddle and his sidekicks would do when they discovered we had tricked them? Just think of the damage they could cause by apparating into the middle of a Muggle city and pulling the same shit they did in the alley. This was a sobering thought for the friends. They certainly believed Harry when he said he took every one of those deaths personally. While they are working on this, they will be laying low, not wanting to risk the slightest possibility of them being caught before they spring their trap. Meanwhile, we know the where and when, and even who's working for him. I honestly think this is our best chance to end this. I will certainly understand if any of you want to change your mind. Harry was stopped from saying any more by Hermione kissing him. That kiss is from us too, Harry. Though personally, I would have gone with smacking you around the head for even suggesting we bow out. Sticking together has brought us this far. It's time to take it all the way. It was then Padma's turn to be kissed from her proud betrothed. Hermione had another thought, though. Harry, what if we're wrong? What if he goes after our families? Goblin warriors have now been garrisoned in Kinnacy to protect Crow's Nest and the goblin families living on our estate. Father Smeaton, Alice, Frank and Remreo are all moving there too. Father has been asked to acquire some rifles Dan specified. I get the feeling there is going to be a lot of shooting practice at Kinnacy. We're taking every precaution we can think of. Hermione, it's their turn to do the dying. The decision made, there would be a bloody towel being put in the soiled clothes basket today. The Hogwarts elves had already been instructed by Lady Helena to let Umbridge's elf take it. They were in their last class of the week, potions with Master Pitsley, when there was a knock at the door and Colin stuck his head into the classroom. Harry, I was grabbed by Madame Umbridge and ordered to come and get you. The champions are meeting with the press. She said something about a weighing the wands ceremony. You don't have a wand though, and I know you won't let old Ollivander anywhere near your knife. It's fine, Colin. Go back and enjoy the rest of your free period. Madame Umbridge has no authority within the school. You don't have to take orders from her. I already told her I wouldn't be taking part in anything other than the tasks. She's just trying to rile me up before Monday. Not much chance of that happening, nor my missing potions. A smiling Colin then left, with no intention of informing Umbridge that Harry wasn't coming to whatever she'd arranged. Master Pitsley enjoyed his time in Hogwarts immensely. He was also one of the few who knew what the four had planned, leaving Hogwarts at the end of their 5th year. He'd been pushing this class hard and they had all responded exactly as he'd hoped. By working even harder, it was now time to give them their reward. As you all know, Messrs. Weasley and Weasley here are sitting the Ministry's NEUT Potions exam at the summer. I expect them to do well. As for the rest of you, OKWA level will be passed by December. You could sit that exam this summer and easily complete your NEUT by the following year. Do you want me to arrange these exams with Professor McGonagall? After getting over the shock of that news, an excited bunch of Ravenclaws and of course Neville all quickly agreed with that idea. Harry still had no intention of sitting these exams, though Hermione explained he would have to pass Muggle exams for entry to university. They intended to spend their 2 years between leaving Hogwarts and starting university studying to do just that. After they got married, of course. Fleur thought Hogsmeade Village was quaint. She was on Roger's arm and enjoying herself, though she couldn't help but notice her date seemed distracted, and not by her. "Are you looking for something, or someone?" "Oh, sorry, Fleur. Just confirming where all the safe havens are. Those plaques are a brilliant idea. As well as having a good time today, I also need to make sure you're safe too. Harry might be able to take everything in with a glance. I need to study it a bit more." The Zat woman was not happy Harry never appeared yesterday. With Madame Longbottom saying he did not need to come, she got more angry still. Harry had already said he wouldn't attend. Maybe with her out of the castle soon, Hermione might be able to convince him that a ball is a good idea. They will still need to change the date though. He will be going home for the holidays. "If there is a ball, I hope you will let me accompany you." This had Fleur chuckling with laughter, a sound that did wondrous things to Roger's insides. "I thought it was Gryffindors who charged in, not intelligent Ravenclaws. And this Ravenclaw's intelligence is telling him to ask first, before anyone else steals in there ahead of me." That musical laughter was once more enchanting him. Roger was hoping for a yes. "If there is a ball announced, and if you ask me, I will be happy to go with you." A very happy Roger then led his date into Honeydukes. He doubted though if even those masters of confectionery could concoct something as sweet as Miss Fleur Delacour. Later, Fleur spotted Bill, with a younger version of himself she didn't know, walking through the village. She asked Roger about it. "That must be Charlie Weasley. He's the only one I haven't met. I wouldn't be surprised if Percy and his fiancée Penny are here too. This is Ginny's first visit to the village and her brothers really watch over her. I pity the wizard who tries to date her. Imagine being faced with 6 very protective older brothers. Why do you not know this Charlie?" "Oh, he works abroad. He's a dragon handler in Romania. Probably here to see the first task on Monday." "You feeling confident about it?" Fleur was actually feeling rather sick. There was certainly the possibility Charlie Weasley was merely at Hogwarts to witness the first task. What was making her feel ill, though, was the thought he could be here in a professional capacity. Fleur had a dreadful premonition that she'd just worked out what the first task was. She held on to Roger's arm a little tighter, making him actually smile. Roger took her reaction as nerves about the first task, resolving to try and keep her mind off the tournament for the rest of today. It was a much relieved Harry who sat down to dinner that Sunday evening. The entire Hogsmeade weekend had just passed without incident. Now he could relax and spend some time with Hermione and their friends. Only after potions tomorrow would he turn his mind to the tournament and the first task. Harry trusted implicitly in the people who would be standing by to intervene tomorrow. Should Voldemort make an appearance, it would be remembered as the shortest attack in history. Between bullets, blades and wands, he would be cut to pieces. There would also be warriors guarding the stadium tonight and sweeping it again for portkeys before the task started. By all accounts, Tom Riddle was an incredibly intelligent wizard. Harry wasn't going to let that worry him, though. The combined smarts and downright sneakiness that his side of this contest brought to the table should be more than a match for the 3 criminals opposing them. He was disturbed from his musings and his delicious dinner by a very worried Lady Helena. "Champion, you are sorely needed. You must hurry, though." A golden Harry shot out of the hall, portraits and ghosts directing him where he needed to be. "Marco, no, stop. I thought we were only going to talk." Do you usually hold conversations with the boys you enter broom closets with? Using her embarrassment at that question, Marco captured her lips once more as his hands continued their predetermined tasks. This saw her struggles resume with increased force and determination. No, Marco. I mean it. I've never gone this far with a boy before. And that is why we are having this problem. You got tired of boys and decided to meet with a man. She had nowhere to go and Marco was a great deal stronger than her. They nearly all said no at this point. Very few said no when he was finished with them. Those that did said it quietly, knowing he could destroy their reputation with a few well-chosen sentences. She was all for it, only later did she begin crying, muttering something about cheating on her boyfriend. This one was really struggling now. Marco had her too far along his chosen course, though, to let that stop him. His little victory smile as he felt her tiring was short-lived as a shiver ran up his back. You, sir, are a cad. Unhand this young witch. I clearly heard her say no, more than once too. If I will not listen to her saying no, what makes you think I care what a ghost says? Go and haunt someone who cares. All youth is certainly wasted on the young. You are a fool as well as a cad. Inside Hogwarts, I have some very powerful friends. Well, once I am finished here, you and your powerful friends are welcome to haunt this cupboard. I will even leave this stupid witch in it. A reminder of things you can no longer do. Marco was too close to his objective now to let a little thing like a ghost watching put him off his stride. One last final effort and her resistance would be crushed. She would soon be his. Those thoughts were interrupted by the spell-locked door being ripped right out of its mountings. A golden hand grabbing his shoulder saw Marco following the door's trajectory by flying into the corridor. He had such a tight hold of the struggling witch that she had no choice but to come along for the ride too. Even in the torch-lit corridor, Harry was able to see everything he needed to at a glance. The clothing pulled open and buttons missing. The bruises starting to appear where the Durmstrang student's fingers had dug deep. The sword of Godric Gryffindor was leaving its sheath, and it cried out for justice. What? She vaunted it. She met me, and we willingly went into that little room together. Young champion, she repeatedly said no, and you can see she put up a fight. He was just too strong, and she had nowhere to run. You would believe the word of a ghost? Unlike you, Sir Nicholas de Memsey Porpington is a man of honor, a ghost who charged a giant basilisk to save Hogwarts students' lives. I certainly believe his word over yours. Watching the blade that was coming slowly toward him, Marco began to fear for his life. He was saved by an unlikely source. The other three had been hot on Harry's heels. While not being able to keep up with Harry when he was magically enhancing his armor, the trio were still easily fast enough to leave the rest of the school behind. Harry, don't kill him. Hermione, if this was a goblin matter, he would already be dead. This incensed the downed wizard and saw him throw any caution to the wind. After all, Marco had standards to protect. If I had been in there with an ugly goblin bitch, I would want you to kill me. Hermione was now between Harry and Marco. Probably the only thing that saved the imbecile's life. He wouldn't be thanking her for that, though. Hermione spun and her foot connected powerfully with his groin, the connection being clearly heard. A big black dog had just raced onto the scene. It transformed into Sirius right beside Neville. Oh, that's just gotta hurt. He deserves it, and more. Neville indicated where Padma was trying to offer some comfort to a distraught witch, while removing her black marauder's robe to provide bodily cover. Sirius instantly agreed with Neville. Hermione's concentration, though, was on the wizard who was now rolling around the floor, clearly in agony. If you had gone anywhere near Sapphire, I can assure you that your wish would have been granted. I would have killed you myself. You clearly didn't learn from grabbing me that first night. I hope you learn from this. Her kick this time wasn't quite as effective, since Marco now had both hands clutching his previously injured equipment. There was the definite sound of some fingers being broken, though. McGonagall had copied Sirius and her cat form, had outrun the masses that were following on behind. She was about to reprimand Hermione for her actions when she saw the sobbing witch in Padma's arms. Minerva headed straight over there, feeling like having a good kick at this brute herself. Tonks was soon with them too, though she and Sirius were quickly pressed into crowd control mode as the rest of the school arrived. Whispers soon spread back along the crowd, alerting those who could not see to what was going on. This led to a wizard elbowing his way to the front. He needed to see for himself. "You told me you had a headache and didn't want any dinner. Now I can see why. You had arranged to meet someone else." The angry redhead was soon faced with Neville. "Ron, I understand you're upset, but this is not the time or place for this." His twin brothers were soon at his side, leading Ron away from the sight of his sobbing girlfriend wrapped in Padma's cloak. An angry Harry then approached Tonks, changing language so the masses wouldn't understand. "What are the chances of the Ministry being able to arrest this piece of shit?" Knowing Harry wouldn't like what she had to say, Tonks was still truthful with him. In any case where only two people are involved, it comes down to his word against hers. That Lavender appears to have agreed to meet him, and probably went into that broom closet willingly, would certainly count against her. "I'm not saying it's right, Harry, just how the law would look at it. If we took this to a trial, they would quickly drag Lavender's reputation through the dirt, and almost certainly be successful in him avoiding being found guilty." Augusta had arrived with Poppy. As the healer headed for Lavender, she joined their conversation. "Because he's not a Hogwarts student, the harshest sanction I can bring is to exclude him from the castle. Only Dumbledore can administer any further punishment." This wasn't good enough for Harry. "Contact Amelia, see if we can get him shipped back to Bulgaria. If he wants to challenge that, he can face me in a duel. The honor of Hogwarts demands no less of me." Augusta agreed, quickly directing a couple of Durmstrang students to get their injured colleague out of her school. She would be contacting Dumbledore right after she spoke to Amelia. Augusta couldn't miss the way her grandson kept looking from Lavender to Parvati, his anger matching Harry's at what he was seeing here. Getting this Marco out the castle quickly might just save his life. Poppy and Minerva soon had Lavender en route to the infirmary while the staff cleared the corridor. Harry turned and bowed his head to Nick and Helena. "Thank you for your actions tonight. They allowed me to get here just in time. We ghosts have always patrolled the castle, helping to keep Hogwarts safe. It was only when headmasters stopped listening to us that we began neglecting our duties. Pure-blood males could do no wrong, and no one wanted to hear a ghost's complaint against them. Thank you, champion, for once more restoring the balance." Helena and Nick then bowed to him, with Nick having to hold his head in place as he did so. Blaise was holding a shaking and tearful Parvati, only releasing her into the arms of her twin. Neville stood beside him as they watched the sisters draw comfort from each other. Harry got here in time to prevent what that bastard intended, otherwise even Hermione wouldn't have been able to stop him. She certainly made sure it won't be happening again. You could practically feel the crunch as she put her foot through Marco's nuts. Understanding this wasn't a brother warning his sister's boyfriend off, Blaise nodded in agreement. "Good. Any wizard who tries to force themselves on a witch deserves at least that. We are two lucky wizards. Neville, if that was Parvati he tried that with, I would have killed him. If that was Pavi, he'd already be dead. Hermione may be able to stop Harry, but none of us could have stopped Padma avenging our sister. Parting her from Lavender was one of the best things that happened to Pav. She finally grew up. You are also very good for her, don't mess it up, Blaise." Here was the gentle warning, and Blaise knew just how to respond. "I don't intend to. I really like Parvati, and Padma scares me a lot more than you do." This almost drew a smile from Neville. "Just goes to show how intelligent you are." Both then moved to hug their witches. Hermione was also trying to talk Harry down. "You got here in time, Harry, and saved a great crime from being committed. You can't do any more than what you've already done. We can't right all the world's wrongs on our own." Harry held her close, whispering a question in her ear. "Why are you so good to me?" She smiled and held him tighter. "Because I'm your girl." The three couples then headed off to the room to eat. None of them fancied returning to the Great Hall tonight. They would have a quiet meal together, leaving the staff to deal with the fallout from the situation. Padma brought up tomorrow's task, just to have something else to talk about. Parvati couldn't believe Harry still didn't know what he'd be facing, or that he wasn't troubled by that. "I could easily find out. Just asking Hogwarts would give me the information I needed. That would be cheating though, and if you're going to cheat, then the entire tournament becomes pointless. Parvati's confession that she would just have to know raised a few smiles, the other 5 well aware of her nosy nature. At breakfast that morning they'd heard Lavender's father had removed her from school. What happens next was anyone's guess. Marco was also now back in Bulgaria. The only thing that stopped Mr. Brown calling him out. Harry had found himself being quietly approached by Fred and George. It seems Ron was having a hard time dealing with the incident, and they were looking for any information that could help their young brother. Guys, I don't know what preceded the incident last night. I do know Lavender fought with everything she had, managing to keep him off her long enough until I got there. That's really all I can tell you. They would think about passing that on to Ron later. Both were unsure of how he would react at the moment. Their parents arriving at the castle today couldn't have happened at a better time. Neither Victor nor any Durmstrang students had entered the castle since the incident. Harry expected to hear their Bulgarian friends' views on the matter later. At the moment he was busy trying to convince a tearful Aula and a concerned Ewan that he would be fine. Both would be meeting their parents later too. The first task started in a few hours. Harry, joking that they would have to offer his apologies for not being there, restored in some weak smiles. All knew the parents would get to see him compete. Hermione's shriek beside him had Harry on his feet, knife in hand and searching for danger. What he saw froze him completely. Padma, Neville and Luna shooting past him soon cured Harry of that affliction. With a wide smile, he made his way to the hall doors. Barely remembering to bow to Master Sharpshot and say hello to Sapphire, Harry then engulfed the only mother he'd ever really known in a needy hug. Hermione, of course, had beaten him there, hugged Sapphire, their mum, and now held their baby brother in her arms. Emma had a tight hold of her eldest son. She whispered in his ear. There are 3 shooters now setting up on the stadium roof. There are also enough warriors and auras out there to fight a war. Your trainer here wouldn't even let me walk up to the castle by myself. Sapphire, of course, was coming too. You'll be careful and come back to us? Of course, Mum. Dobby will let you know as soon as it's over. We'll be back in the castle as soon as we can. After that, Jamie and I are going to stay in the castle with Henrika and Astrid. I just couldn't sit there and watch you being put in danger. Although loath to intrude on this tender moment, her excitement meant Hermione couldn't hold back any longer. Harry, look at the size Jamie's getting. I'm sure he recognized me. He let Emma go to then dote on his baby brother. The entire school was now used to this side of Harry, having watched him often with his goddaughter. The group was soon surrounded by all their friends, with Jamie being introduced to the entire school as Tonks took Emma over to sit with her and Henrika. We'll get a chance to sit down and talk with everyone after this is over. They're too psyched up at the moment. It's not like Amelia's party. We've known this was coming and had time to prepare. Oh, I know all about that. I just left a husband who has been preparing to put a bullet in someone for the last few weeks. It feels totally alien to a couple of dentists, until I remember who these people are and what they will be here to do. If I had a gun, I would shoot them myself. I just kissed all 3 of them and said to aim true before I headed here. Tonks had her arm around the woman, understanding exactly how she felt. Augusta then rose to speak to the hall. Those of you who worked in the stadium in King Crossy, you have my thanks for volunteering to do so again in our own version. Professor Lupin and Lord Black will be in charge of that operation today. The first family portkey is due to arrive at 2, with everyone due to be here by 3. Professors Flitwick and Sprout are in charge of that area. Check with them if you're not sure when your family will arrive. Since most visitors will be fluing or apparating to Hogsmeade and walking up, they too will begin arriving shortly. With all the organization taken care of, I would just like to quietly wish our champion good luck. I say quietly because it looks as if Jamie Granger has fallen asleep. Such was the respect for their champion. The applause barely raised above a murmur so they wouldn't wake the baby. Harry handed Jamie over to Pansy. It was time for them to leave. Tonks and Master Sharpshard escorted the 4, plus Sapphire and Luna, out the hall to the stadium. As Pansy was handing Jamie back to his mother, Draco finally figured out what was bothering him. There's more going on here than just this tournament. Those four are like coiled snakes, ready to strike. Are you expecting trouble today? Emma wasn't really sure what to say. Henrika solved her problem. Harry's name was originally stuck in that cup for a purpose. We're just being careful. It all seemed to click into place for the Slytherin. Shit! Harry's using himself as bait. Seeming Emma flinch at his deduction told him he was right. Draco immediately regretted it though, as the pain on the woman's face was clear to see. I'm sorry, Emma, I wasn't thinking. You know Harry will be though. Those four will have gone over all the possibilities, dozens of times. I know, Draco. It's just hard to sit here and be confident. There's no way I could watch, however. The full implications began to hit the Slytherin. If Harry's the bait, then there will be a trap waiting to be sprung. Can we assume Amelia and Barchoke are involved in this too? A nod saw the couple leaving. Pansy couldn't miss the expression of awe Draco wore. What's going on? The Order of the Ace are prepared for war, with the Ministry and the Goblin Nation fully behind them. The Dark Lord thinks he's holding all the aces. Harry, though, has switched the deck on him. Voldemort is left with nothing but a pair of jokers, while Harry has a full house. Should they turn up today, the battle will be over as quickly as that night at Susan's party, with 5,000 people watching. But they can't get through the wards, can they? Our mums are in no danger, or Harry would have done something. He might put himself up as bait, but he'd never do the same to someone else. Would you like to bet me the other three had to practically fight him to be included? I'm also certain no one else knows. Luna would be in a worse state than Emma if she thought those four were heading off to battle. Pansy had to agree with that. Luna certainly considered all four of them family. Pansy had been looking forward to today, not least because they would get to meet their mothers. Now she was going to be a bundle of nerves until the first task was over. Harry could feel the nerves in the changing room. Fleur tried to smile in greeting. It came across more resembling a grimace. Victor could barely look in his direction, obviously embarrassed by what happened last night. Amos and Umbridge entered the new changing room. It was time the competitors found out just what they were facing. Pulling out a purple silk bag, the three champions were given their instructions. In a moment you will put your hand in this bag and draw out a model of what you'll be facing. There is a different breed for each of you, and it will also determine what order you face the first task. Once you draw, it will start the clock ticking. Whoever chooses the number 1 position will only have 30 minutes to form their strategy. Ladies first. Fleur placed her hand in the bag, withdrawing a tiny model of a Hebridean black dragon that had a number 2 around its neck. Having her fears confirmed, saw Fleur almost drop the animated model. Things then got a lot worse when Amos described exactly what they had to do with their real dragons. There are 3 dragons, all nesting females sitting on eggs. We have added a golden egg to their nests. Your task is to retrieve that egg. Victor then drew a Welsh green and pole position. Harry found himself left with a Hungarian horntail and the number 3 spot. This saw his eyebrows raise questioningly. He was well aware he'd gotten the most aggressive breed of dragon. Even his model was bigger than the other 2. Dolores couldn't hide her delight at this outcome, nor could she wait to offer an explanation. It was felt that the person going last had an advantage in that they would have longer to form their strategy. Therefore the dragons get progressively more dangerous as the task unfolds. She was disappointed, though, when Harry just shrugged his shoulders and then lay down on one of the benches. He appeared ready to take a nap. Dolores had at least wanted to see him sweat. She could still hope the goblin-loving brat might get seriously injured. The champions were told they would be called when it was time to face their dragon. Harry had his eyes closed and gave no indication he had heard. Dan was enclosed in what was a superb shooting hide, built as part of the stadium roof structure. He was encased in the center hide, giving him full views of the arena and the ground leading up to the castle. Barchoke was in another hide well to his right, Frank equidistant on his left. They had communication mirrors set, and Dan found himself using his as the first dragon was being maneuvered into the arena. Shit? How the hell is Harry supposed to face that? If I let that monster anywhere near our boy without shooting it, Emma will skin me alive. This drew a chuckle from Barchoke. Relax, Dan. Harry is a goblin. All our children study dragons in depth. He will know all its strengths and weaknesses. Okay, but you get to tell Hermione and Emma if anything goes wrong. Like his son, Frank didn't say much. Like Neville too, though, when Frank spoke they all listened. We're here to make sure nothing goes wrong. They all took that to heart. They were here to ensure nothing happened to their family. Each would have no hesitation doing that. As the best shot, Dan was in the middle, and would target Voldemort. Frank had asked to target Lestrange, leaving Barchoke to take down Rookwood. That was ideal conditions though. They had their mirrors in case things went wrong with Plan A. Albus sat in the stand, fuming with anger. Not only had that idiot Marco caused him heaps of trouble, walking into the stadium graphically illustrated just how far things had changed since he left. There were stalls providing food he'd never heard of, goblins mixing with wizards, and even muggles in Hogwarts. This had to be stopped. Albus Dumbledore had to stop it.